Welcome to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name's Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. Today, I'm going to go over addiction, mental health, and especially how it relates to the Rob Reiner and to the Nick Reiner story here, because it absolutely plays a humongous part. And yours truly, the Shepherd of Black Sheep, I have personal experience with mental health issues and addiction issues, so I can talk about it from that angle. I can talk about it from what my parents tried to do to help me. And there's a lot going on with it, right? Because there's not going to be a one size fits all solution for anyone, because each situation is going to be a little bit different. You have to remember that when it comes to generalized advice. And today, I'm a little more back on topic. I talked about Candace Owens and some current events the last couple days. I don't know if my regulars liked that very much, but it did get me some viewership and perhaps exposed more people to my content about narcissism and toxic behavior. So maybe that's going to be the way that they can find them. Ellie, how are you? So what we're going to do here is, I guess before I start the interview, right, I can share a little bit about my experience with mental health and addiction. And then we can go into what happened with Rob Reiner and Rick Reiner, etc. Now, and here's the impression I get is this. Some people are saying, well, Rob Reiner is associated with Epstein, and maybe Nick Reiner did what he did because of that association. He did it for justice. That is not the implication that I get here. That is not the thought that I have. I think really he's a kid that, and now he's an adult, that had mental health issues, and he seemed very resentful, bitter, envious, and he would blame anyone else except for himself. And he had a lot of self-pity, it looks like, too. And Rob, I think he blamed himself for how his son turned out. And he would try to, it seemed like he was really making an effort to try to be a good parent to Nick. But no matter what he did, just wasn't good enough to him. And so there comes a point where no matter what you do as a parent, you can't give someone the willingness to change, and you can't force them to change if they don't want to. And of course, when there's mental health stuff going on, everything becomes 100 times more difficult. Add psychiatric drugs into it, add illicit drugs into it, and then it becomes another 100 times worse. But the problem is, as we saw, mental health issues, especially schizophrenia, etc., plus illegal drugs, is an extremely dangerous combination. And for Rob Reiner and his wife, it turned into a massive tragedy. And now the siblings of Nick Reiner, they have to live with this now too. And according to his daughter, the person who found the bodies there, she thought that her parents were her best friends. Now, does that mean that her parents were perfect parents? Absolutely not. We know that parents don't treat each sibling the same. But with Nick, it does seem like the mental health issues were absolutely there, and maybe his siblings didn't have them. George, welcome to the chat. Haven't seen you in here for a minute. Holy mackerel. But Ellie says, that is great. You had a big turnout this week, Jared. It is your channel to do what you want. Thank you. Like I said, I don't plan on talking about that stuff all the time, but I want to start incorporating some more current events like I'm doing in this video, because it also relates to my experience too. So I'll tell you about my experience before I jump into the video. Mac, how are you? So for me, I had severe anxiety. And what I realized was later, and it took me into my 30s to understand this, I had undiagnosed autism. And when I was in high school, I just was really socially awkward, had a lot of anxiety, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to be a normal person. So what I did was I gravitated towards drugs and alcohol because it worked. I was able to feel night and day better. I was confident, assertive, all of the things that I didn't think I was when I was sober. So of course, I became obsessed because my normal baseline just wasn't very good. And this is one of the clues to me. If someone has a mental illness or undiagnosed autism, how is your baseline? Because for me, my baseline, especially once puberty hit, was not very good. And I always wanted to jump out of my own skin. And at first it was weed, and then it later turned to alcohol, and then it turned into opiates. But the opiates, they were the things that really took my life off the rails. And I got signed out of school when I was 19 because I was using methadone, Oxycontin, and I went to rehab when I was 19 because my parents made me go. I didn't want to go though. And this is the mistake a lot of parents make is I understand why they did. They're just doing what they thought was best. But again, no one can give someone else the willingness to change, especially when it comes to drug addiction. But part of the reason I didn't have the willingness was because I had those mental health issues. I only felt okay when I was using something. When I was using something, everything was night and day better. I felt like life had a million possibilities. If I wasn't, I was super depressed and anxious and I hated life. So, of course, if that's my baseline, of course I wanted to use. Why wouldn't I? And no one knew when I went to rehab and then I went to intensive outpatient after that. No one knew. They put me in the double trouble group, meaning you have a mental illness and addiction. But what that mental illness was, nobody told me. They gave me antipsychotic drugs, but no one told me what the issue was. Danielle from hell, how are you? Romy is leaving across the street in her own house. Meanwhile, Nick was threatened with an eviction from the guest house. His parents also kicked him to the street in 2018. Yes, Nick was homeless many times. And apparently that night, Nick was at a party at Conan O'Brien's house with his parents. Nick and Michelle, they asked Conan, hey, can our son come along? And Conan said, okay. And Nick was creeping out all sorts of people at this party, asking them several questions. Are you famous? Are you this? Are you that? And he was weirding people out. And if you look as a professional face reader, you look at some of the pictures of Nick Reiner, something's not quite right. He's got those crazy eyes, and that's something to watch out for. I mean, it just is. So Rob confronted Nick at the party. They got into a big fight. And then Rob and Michelle left. Apparently, they went home. Nick went to the home too. And that's when allegedly the murder occurred. So that was that. But all throughout his life, Nick, I think he went to his first rehab at 15 years old. Went to his first rehab at 15, started substances at 14, and he had been to 17 different rehabs. And one of the things I'm hearing is Rob Reiner had said, we made a mistake in trusting the licensed professionals. The licensed professionals said Nick is lying and manipulating in order to continue using drugs. And Nick was guilt tripping his parents. But Rob Reiner said, oh, it was a mistake to believe the licensed professionals. I should have been believing Nick. But in this case, I don't think that was the best course of action. I do think there are certainly times where the licensed professionals are wrong, but not in this case, perhaps, because what Nick Reiner needed to do was find a way to get to a good enough baseline so that he didn't feel like he needed to escape to hard drugs anymore. When I help someone that has a mood disorder, that's number one. You got to get to that place where your day to day is okay. And even something like medically assisted treatment, that's things like Suboxone, methadone, that's better than nothing. It's better than dying, and it's better than committing homicide. Now, some people in the 12-step programs are really against it because they think it's not really clean. But I say, you know what? Sometimes you need stepping stones. I had used stepping stones many moons ago. I was on Suboxone for a couple of years. And that was probably the one thing that stopped me from really dying, honestly, because it was self-medicating my undiagnosed autism and anxiety. And I felt like I could just live. Like, okay, I can be good enough here so that I can survive and finish college, etc. But then I eventually got off, and that was awful, by the way. Methadone withdrawal, Suboxone withdrawal, that stuff is no joke. It's very strong. But ultimately, I went to NA and AA, and I actually followed their path. And I got a sponsor. I went to meetings. I got a home group. I worked the steps. And for me, that process was life-changing. It changed my life, gave me self-awareness, made me understand how selfish and self centered I had been. And it was really eye opening. And I learned a lot from doing those things. But after I was clean for a while, and I got really clean, I stopped caffeine, I stopped cigarettes, I even tried to stop sugar, but that was really hard. But I still realized I still had mood issues, I still had anxiety. And I'm clean at this point, but I still had issues. And it's really important to try to get clean because if you don't, it's going to be really difficult to truly diagnose a mental illness because a lot of the symptoms of drug addiction can mimic a mental illness. But of course, you can see how hard that is, right? Where that vicious cycle can go round and round. But for me, eventually, I figured it out for me. I started taking a lot of supplements, and that really turned my life around. And it took a while. It was a painful process, but I was able to do it. So, but why threaten him with homeless again? Oh, here's the thing about Rob and Michelle there. There does come a point where, for the rest of the family's safety, sometimes you do need firm boundaries. And yes, Nick was very scared of being homeless again. He had been homeless before, but there still needs to be boundaries. And yes, each situation needs to be taken individually, but when someone's mental health is as fragile as his was, you can't be too safe, unfortunately. You can't be cautious enough. Some are saying both Rob and Michelle are narcissists. Hey, I mean, and that could be. I'm not saying yes or no. I don't know enough about them. I know that they're a super wealthy family, and I know super wealthy families have different problems than the average family. And he was married previously, and I'm sure there's all sorts of variables that go into that. But Nick was extremely envious of his father and his grandfather and their success. So if you want to consider something vulnerable narcissism, that might be an example of that. Nick might have been a vulnerable narcissist person where he was really bitter and angry. And he just didn't seem like he was ever able to mature. He wasn't able to say, okay, I'm going to practice radical self-respect. I'm going to have goals of my own. And granted, when you're handed everything on a silver platter and born with a silver spoon in your mouth, it does change things. Thank you, Danielle. Finding a purpose also really helped me as well. Finding something that I should be doing. For me, I felt like that was educating people about toxic behaviors and narcissism, helping people practice radical self-respect. That was my goal. When I had my near-death experience, God released me from my caffeine addiction, and he was very proud that I stopped the smoking, drinking, and drugs to give my son a stable childhood. Congratulations on that. Caffeine, nicotine, and drinking, that's no joke. Caffeine's tough. I mean, I drink coffee every day, but I get it. I totally get it. Max says, I quit soda and coffee for almost a year, then had one Dr. Pepper and fell. I can totally relate to that because caffeine and sugar both are one hell of a drug. And I tell people, everyone's addicted to sugar unless they're going out of their way to not have it. Because in the American diet, sugar isn't everything. They add it to everything. High fructose corn syrup, where unless you're specifically going out of your way to not have sugar, you're on sugar. And I'll tell you, I'd go through sugar withdrawal. I drink decaf coffee. But I have a hard time quitting Diet Coke. You know why, Danielle? Because Diet Coke has DL-phenylalanine. That's one of my supplements that I take, by the way. That's something that it's like a mood booster. That's probably why. That and the NutraSweet. If your parents have money, you shouldn't be homeless. Well, normally. But sometimes with severe mental illness, there has to be exceptions. Kat, welcome back. I know I talked about current events and politics the last couple of days, but we're talking about more to what I normally talk about here. Romy gets a house and Nick the street. I mean, he was still there. He was still in the guest house, right? I didn't know them well enough either to diagnose them, but I didn't get a narcissistic vibe from Rob Reiner. He doesn't seem like a Harvey Weinstein to me. Yeah, Harvey's much worse, of course. Now, I've heard some speculations about some of Rob's behavior. I'm not saying he's completely innocent, but I just never really got that horrible vibe from him. Some people think so because he was feuding with Trump, and I think politics has entered the chat a little bit with that. But I never got that vibe from him. Psychopathy is hereditary, so there's that. I do think the work sucker applies to Rob, though Nick had him around his little finger. Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that. I think Rob felt guilty. He felt guilty almost, and he was trying to help him, but Nick just wasn't stepping up. He wasn't doing the next right thing, and he was kind of stuck in this adult adolescence phase, this emotional immaturity phase. And again, mental health makes that all 100 times harder. Absolutely. And we're going to go over one of their interviews in a minute here, too. Kat says, I just drink water. I gave up fizzy drinks, as we say in England, a long time ago. Dude, I love some sparkling water. Not the ones with flavors, but just regular sparkling water. I love it. Kat says he is more than just an addict, a bloody psychopath. Well, yeah, considering his actions here, yes. And like I said, I don't think he did it for any moral, virtuous reasons. I think he just did it out of bitterness and anger. That's my impression so far. And it's just allegedly so far, too, by the way. His name was circulating around the Hollywood. Yeah, I heard that. I did hear that. And I'm not saying he's completely innocent of that. But even if that is the case, I don't really think that's the reason why Nick did it. I don't think so. I think it's unrelated to that, if it's even true. I'm not saying it's true because it's a big thing to throw around, but I'm not saying it's definitely not true either. So let's see here. So here's Nick and Rob here. They're talking about Being Charlie. That's a movie that they made together. And what you're going to see in this is Rob Reiner is really trying to give Nick the credit and say, this movie's about him. This is his movie. He knows more about it than me. And it seems like he was really trying to be humble and give Nick more of the credit in this, which, hey, that's what a good leader should do. Good leaders take more than their fair share of the blame and less than their fair share of the credit. That's what a good leader does. Awake, how are you? And Crazy, glad to see you here too. Phil Bradley, neither late nor early, just on time. Kung Fu Panda says, no, Trump is the narcissist. That's why there was conflict between him and Rob. Oh, for sure. I mean, a political conflict too. They say it's jealousy of his father's success and that he couldn't live up to that himself. That probably played a part. A 32-year-old man should not be living off his parents. He should have been finding his own way at this point. Absolutely true. Mental health does make it more difficult. I acknowledge that, but still, it's not an excuse. Substance abuse is not an excuse, really, and mental health isn't necessarily like I don't know if I should say it that way. It contributes to a lot of things. But if we have mental health issues, we still got to take responsibility. Ellie says, I believe Nick was abnormal by design, then drugs broke him beyond repair, and the parents were in a crippling denial. That sounds accurate to me. That sounds accurate. I think it was a rough situation. No parents want to be in that situation, right? Where your kid seems to be all over the place, mentally ill, using hard drugs. You don't want them to OD, but then you don't want them to be homeless, but you don't want to enable them either. It's a heartbreaking situation. It really is. It's tough for everybody involved. But let's start this here.
What was the toughest for you? What do you think, Nick?
It wasn't very tough. I mean, it was a pretty nice experience for me. I don't really think it was like tough at all.
Really?
I mean, of course it was a little bit, but
I mean, we did get into fights over things, but ultimately it forced us to make the film better. I mean, we get into issues, and I would see, he would. The whole process for me, I can just speak for myself. It did make me understand him a lot more.
And so the movie's about a person who has substance use, and apparently there's a father in the movie that is similar to Rob in real life, and he's trying to understand the other person's addiction. And look at Nick here, though. He looks and this is, I think, from almost 10 years ago, this interview. And he just looks very unsure of himself, like fidgety, like, uncomfortable, we'll say.
And I think it made me a better father. Hopefully it did. I don't know, but I think that, and you'll see it in the film. What happens is, your kid, if your kid is going through rough times, the parent is, your main job is to keep your child safe. So I would do anything. I felt at a loss. So I would do anything that, as we say in the film, anybody with a desk and a diploma, I would listen to them. And the whole idea of tough love, and you have to be a certain way. And it's not my nature. It's not the way I am built, but I went and did that, and I think that, at the end of the day, I know my child better than an expert does. And I probably should have trusted my own instinct. And that's one of the things I did learn about the whole experience.
Now, in retrospect, that seems like a very silly thing to say, doesn't it? He wants to say, I know my son better than experts. But here's the thing. If you don't understand mental illness and you don't understand addiction, you don't really understand your son at that case. The only people that would understand your son are other people that have addiction issues and mental health issues. That's why programs like NA and AA are so helpful, because there's a group of people that have a similar problem, a similar struggle. And so they understand each other. They can't pull the wool over each other's eyes because they get it. They know the lying. They know the manipulation tactics. They know what they're likely to say to be able to get away with using more. And I wanted to show people what Kat said here too, because I think this could be correct. I think he was probably on the spectrum. That very well could be. Developed a comorbid personality disorder, and combined with substance abuse, created a monster. But that's just my opinion. Yes, that's a three-headed monster. The three-headed monster that causes a lot of issues, let me tell you. And again, we're seeing all of this now, hindsight being 2020, by the way. Sarah, welcome to the chat. His love for his child was exceptional, just watching him helping his son through the interview. Yeah, it seems like he was really trying to help. It seems like he was really trying to be there for Nick and trying. But it seems like Nick was just kind of being like an angsty kid and just kind of not accepting it, being angry, bitter. Doing a movie doesn't make you a good father. 22 years later, he woke up. No, just doing a movie doesn't make you a good father. But I think, and we don't know what went on behind closed doors, but I do think he was making an effort. I do think that. What about the responsibility to keep the rest of the family safe? Exactly right. And that's where you have to make some tough decisions sometimes. And sometimes maybe this is a situation where you cut off your kid. We don't talk about that much on the channel here, but sometimes, considering how it turned out, this is what you got to do sometimes for the safety of everyone else or for your own safety. Yes, if Rob and Michelle cut him off completely, went no contact with their son, is he still alive today? Or do they still find a way to do it? Do you still find a way to do it? I don't know. I have a friend whose brother was schizophrenic. After their dad passed away, their brother moved in the widowed mother. A couple of months later, he shot his dogs and his mother. And that's a tragedy. That's no good. I want to know if Nick was abused when he was a young child by a babysitter or somebody. It's a good question to ask. As far as I know, we haven't heard that yet. But it doesn't mean it didn't happen. And granted, when there's addiction so young, often there is abuse involved. But will I say always? I'm hesitant to say always about anything. I think, and why do I say that? Because if you have inherent mental illness, that's biological. That's there regardless of abuse, regardless of CPTSD. Inherent mental illness is there. What do we talk about all the time with Dr. Salerno, right? We talk about the inherent genetic traits. They don't need to be triggered. They're there. And so for some people, they have this mental illness that they want to start self-medicating. Or maybe it's undiagnosed autism. They want to self-medicate. That's a separate issue than CPTSD and abuse. But it absolutely makes CPTSD worse. I'll say that too. I say that from experience. You're going to be facing RICO charges for paying Kid Rock to take me out for the Illuminati, for Mason Epstein, blah, 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 blah. You're going to give back what you stole from me too? I don't know what that means. No RICO charges to something but the FBI. I believe even with no drugs, the son was weak and had a mental deficiency that was serious. Definitely very serious, that's for sure. I had to go no contact on my covert narcissist twin sister because she was very jealous of me having a baby. That sucks. Yeah, envy. They had no problem smearing my 4-year-old's name, so we had to go no contact. Yeah, it sounds like you did what was best for you. And I'm all for that. Whether that's parents going no contact from kids, or twin sisters, or kids going no contact from their parents.
I think the bonding came not from the story itself, but from the fact that we were working on a movie together, and I could see him in his, I would think, in the form that he could express himself the best, which is making movies, because he has so much experience. And so seeing that sort of turned me around to be like, okay, I should probably...
No, sorry, I'm responding.
Oh, I should probably shut up and listen to him because he knows a lot more about this. He knows I don't know anything, so I'll learn whatever he has to teach me.
I just think that's such a fascinating thing to say, that like your father, who you would always want to be at his best as your father, may be a type of person who's at his best when he's making movies, and that makes him more understandable or relatable as a father to you, which is so fascinating to me.
Yeah, that it really clicked for me because we didn't bond a lot as a kid. Like, he really liked baseball, I like basketball, and he could watch that with my brother, but baseball. But I just, when I saw him do that, and it was something that I'm interested in, I was like, wow, like he really knows a lot, and like it made me feel closer to him and be like, yeah.
You're like, wow, my dad's Rob Reiner.
I never had thought about it, and then
Yeah, it didn't cross your mind, right?
Never.
No.
Never watched A Few Good Men. Didn't see that one.
No, but it's interesting that Nick would talk about it in that way because, yeah, we did share that experience, but you know, even though I've had a lot of experience making movies, you know, and I said this to him many, many times, that he was the heart and soul of the film. So when it came to,
And this is Rob trying to give his son the credit, right? Giving more credit to his son than himself. That's a humble thing to do, if you ask me.
making the film deeper and better, I would have to really defer to him. I mean, even though I have had all this experience in making films, the core of this film, I really had to look to him. I relied on him for giving it the honesty and the truth that it has.
Did you work with him on set? Were you on set for the majority of the shooting?
I was on set with him. Yeah.
No, sorry, go ahead.
I have no idea what I was gonna say.
Yeah, he's awkward. Absolutely. But this is true too. But look at Matthew Perry. He started drinking very young and he had a good childhood from what he reported. Yeah, that's absolutely a thing. It makes people uncomfortable that it's a thing, but it's definitely a thing. People want to point to abuse or SA or something because at least at that point it explains it. No one wants to think, well, it was just in my biology. It was just in my genes, because I think what happens is they feel disempowered if that's the case. And speaking of this debate, I'll be speaking to Dr. Salerno and Christian John tomorrow, and we're going to go over some of this stuff. We're going to go over some of this thing. Tragic stuff is right. Perry had a good childhood, but he said he always felt his parents were attractive and successful. He felt inferior. I mean, Matthew Perry is a handsome lad and very successful. More successful than his parents, I would say. I'm glad you're making these points because, or is he more, who were Matthew Perry's parents? I'm glad you're making these points because I was curious if something happened to him or if it was just the way he was born. Yeah, it's possible it was, right? Everyone wants to point the finger at, oh, it must have been SA or abuse, but just not always. I'm not ruling it out. Not ruling it out completely from other like babysitters or whomever, but it just isn't mandatory for this. It's just not. And any clinician worth their weight in salt knows that.
No, he was there every day. I mean, we would, you know, we worked for a year before, you know, helping craft the script, and then doing the whole shooting, and then post production, he would come in the cutting room. I mean, we went through it together. There's no question.
I have to ask, you said it's the most personal project that you've ever been a part of. And I think when people watch an hour and a half movie, they can sort of feel the personal aspect from the filmmakers or that it's a personal project. But as a filmmaker, as you said, it takes a year, it takes 2 years. There are certain objective things that you have to do as a filmmaker that completely remove the personal. And most of filmmaking can be that part of the job. How do you remain personally attached to the project? How do you maintain that sort of little personal spot in your brain when there are so many decisions and so many things you have to do on a day-to-day basis in a project like this that are not personal?
Well, I mean, you do have the craft of being a filmmaker, so you do. There are certain grammatic, there's certain film grammar that you're going to use to tell a story. But I could never get away from the fact that it's personal because we're doing it together. Every time I look over, that's my son. There's my boy, and so that never goes away, no matter whatever craft I have. It's always there.
Nick, how involved were you with the casting and everything? I mean, this kid is amazing in the film. He's an incredible lead. I've never seen him.
People know Nick
before.
Robbins.
He was given good.
Yeah, he's a really good actor. I mean, he was in that Kings this summer, and he's in Jurassic World. He's a great actor, and Nick was there for all the casting. All of the auditions.
I was sitting there, but
yeah, but you always gave your.
Look at it. So he's disagreeing with his father's framing there. You could say that's a little bit petty or childish, perhaps, when it's just not really necessary to throw that out there. Especially considering how hard it seems like Rob is trying to connect here. And Nick's kind of like, I don't really care. I'll be a little bit of a dick.
Opinion.
I was like, I saw that girl Morgan Saylor on Homeland, and I think during the season she went to rehab or something, and I was just like, oh, she's a perfect rehab girl.
Yeah,
that was the only.
He pushed for Morgan Saylor like crazy. Yeah.
You had a personal connection to her right away?
No, but
just felt like you knew her.
Felt like I knew her from some land.
Yeah. And this kid is, I mean, he carries the movie in many ways. He's in every scene of the film, and he's fantastic. How do you know when you're casting someone that they're going to be able to do that? After this long, you've worked with some of the biggest actors of all time, but you're casting a relatively unknown kid to carry the weight of a movie like this. How did you know that he was up to the task?
Well, you start with having an idea of who the character is. And in this case, even though it's not Nick, it's certainly an extension of him in certain ways. I have that in the back of my head. I'm looking at an actor and I want to see if he has the qualities, some of the qualities that I see in Nick in terms of his honesty and his depth and the way he plays things. And then, to be honest with you, he auditions. And in the case of Nick Robinson, he auditioned with the guy that plays his friend in the movie, Devin Bostic, who plays Adam. And they clicked immediately. It was like as if they had known each other for forever. And
so I wanted to give this here. This is true too. Drugs and alcohol have a devastating effect on the developing brain. He started substance abuse as a very young teen. Absolutely. People don't talk about that as much anymore, especially with the push for legal weed, etc. But weed to the developing brain, not good. Not good at all. I don't think it helped me at all. God knows I did it enough. But for men, the frontal lobe in your brain doesn't fully develop until you're 25. So anything you do before that, it's wild. And I sure did a lot. That's for sure. Really like Robin Wolf of Wall Street, for sure. There's a classic role for him. It's called self-preservation. Also, my daughter has NPD. M is in Mary PD, and anxiety and depression, which is she's on meds, has a doctor for her mental illness. Well, that's good. I think we don't know everything. We know psychology, but we're not familiar with entities and spiritual attachments. Yeah, there could be an element of that going on for sure.
I said, "Ooh, that's what it needs to be, and it needs to feel like that."
Right.
And another thing, other than casting, we all stayed at a hotel, the Hyatt House, at this, and we all hung out after every day. And that kid, when he first showed up, he had a book about junkies. He had watched some YouTube, and he started asking me questions about it. And I would try to fill him in as best as possible. But since the writing was done by us and Matt, he kind of got our sensibilities. So did Devin from just hanging out with us, try to help him with that in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. The father in this is a former Hollywood actor, now turned politician. So he's got one foot in Hollywood and one foot in politics. This seems like as this character, as Charlie was an extension of Nick. This seems like this character could be an extension of you, Rob. As
Yeah.
you sort of
Well, that was the idea. That was the idea that I wanted to portray a character that was somewhat like me. I mean, it's not exactly like me because hopefully I'm not that big an asshole. But but we wanted to have an antagonist, and we wanted to have there to be conflict between the father and son. And the fact that Carrie Elwes, who was in Princess Bride, did this part, I felt really good because I had kept in touch with him over the years and always looked for something to do with him, and I just felt comfortable that I could put the essence of me in his hand.
So I want to put this up here too. Nick has zero emotionally to his father. Total disconnect. It looks that way, doesn't it? It looks like he's just in his own world, not connected to his father, just there. He's there. They don't seem to have any kind of connection together. And that's like, and maybe Rob doesn't realize it. I don't think Rob realizes the disconnect because maybe he doesn't understand mental illness. He doesn't understand addiction. So he just doesn't get it. He doesn't get it.
Hands, and so that was a good thing. But it's I do have a foot in politics, and I do, and I was an actor and all that. So we tried to make it as close to what we went through as possible. But it is a fiction. I mean, it is a fiction.
Well, I guess my question is, as a person who is a director and a producer, I mean, Castle Rock Entertainment, I don't know if people know, created Seinfeld, and it just in absolute classics of our generation. There, yeah, I was hoping you would do that. Did you find that? Did you find at a time when Nick needed you that you were also maybe really busy with a movie that you were working on? Because making movies, making TV shows does take a lot of work, be it on the set, reading the scripts, or just dealing with the business behind the scenes.
That's a better question to ask Nick, because I don't know if I was as available as I might have been, but that's something that you could answer. I mean,
this is a big question here. Let's see how he answers this.
What was the question? Sorry.
He wanted to know if.
Oh my God. So that says something right there. He tuned out and he wasn't even paying attention to what his father was saying, just in his own world. A little bit of covert disrespect there. Now, Rob, I think he's really trying to connect with his son, but it just doesn't seem like he realizes that he's not. And he's a little nervous in this attempt to connect to his son because it's a public interview. It's here on YouTube. It's wherever it was first aired. And he's trying, but it just doesn't seem to be landing. So he has to repeat the question.
If being involved in show business and all that took me away from you to any degree that
No.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
That was a pretty dismissive answer there. Not really, he's not giving him anything.
How would you say this film differs from the past dramatic works that you've done? I mean, I think this one is definitely much more dramatic than most of your work, except for maybe like A Few Good Men or a couple of.
Oh, there's a lot of humor in this though too. I mean, there's a lot of big laughs in it, and I always felt like if you're going to do anything even that remotely mirrors the life experience, it's going to be funny and it's going to be tragic. I mean, there's some very dark moments in the film, but there's some also really, really funny moments. So the only thing for me, and I always tried to, even in Misery, there's laughs, I always try to find ways of getting humor in it. The thing that's different for this is that it's closer to the bone than any of the other films I've done.
So is Misery closer to the bone.
Closer to the bone, but in a different way.
Yeah. You brought me there. I couldn't
I know.
As soon as you said there were laughs in Misery, the ankle immediately appeared in my mind.
Big laugh.
Yeah.
When she breaks his ankle, a laugh riot.
Is it not that you would ever want to not have comedy in any of your projects, but having grown up in the comedy world, Is it difficult for you to not have comedy, to not sort of be obsessed with comedians and stand up and joke telling?
I mean, it's in my blood. I mean, it's the way I view life. I mean,
And look at Nick here. Looks just very uncomfortable and unsure of himself and is in his own world. Like he's probably thinking, huh, when can I go use?
I'm not, the way my father is. I mean, he's more of a pure comedian. Nick was saying that the film that he likes best of the ones I did was Stand By Me. And, that makes me feel good because that film was the first film that really reflected my personality more than anything I've done. It has a moodiness and a melancholy to it, but it also has laughs and there's fun to it. So that's more my personality. I always see funny things and also sad things. I try to blend the two if I can.
Nick, what about you? How often do you find yourself having the same sort of comic tenor as your father?
Well, I try to be funny whenever I can, but I don't really know. I don't know.
So, and again, another example of disconnection.
What that meant.
Well, when you're working on this script, did you feel like you had to sort of
And he's saying he doesn't understand the question. This kind of makes me think maybe it is also some undiagnosed autism, as Kat said, because maybe he just isn't socially calibrated. He doesn't understand what's going on here.
inject humor, or did you sort of find the humor organically?
No, there's so much funny stuff that happens in rehab, and a lot of funny people. Like, it's tragic and all, but the people that are there are not going to want you to throw them a pity party. They're going to want you to laugh at the situation and make light of it.
There's a great scene in it, in the movie when you see it, where the main character Charlie is gotten bathroom detail, and he's having to clean the bathroom, and he's with his friend there, and they're working. The two guys in rehab, and they're cleaning the bathroom, and there's a dialogue between the two of them that's hysterical, and it's actually a conversation that Nick had with somebody that he encountered, and so they put it right in the script.
Yeah, the confusion in that scene is very real, and I sort of got a sense when I watched it, like, this is a real conversation.
Yeah.
I can tell that this conversation
This actually happened
somewhere.
and he couldn't
Commenter said Nick looks like Ted Bundy and Clark Kent at the same time. It's actually that's a good analogy.
figure out what that. I mean, for those of you who haven't seen it, I don't want to give too much of away, but it's about a guy who gets sexual favors and also scores dope. And
It's a who's on first with heroin and hookers.
the other guy can't figure out, well, what is the guy who's giving you the favors? He's also giving you the dope. What is he getting out of this? And he couldn't figure it out. So it's pretty funny.
Rob, I have to ask, as we said that you're an actor and a director who's also had one foot in politics. After Indiana last night and Kasich this morning, how are you feeling coming to the end of this year's Republican primary and Democratic primary?
Well, it's probably the most bizarre political cycle I've ever experienced in my life. But I do believe that if America has any sense of anything, we will reject Donald Trump, and we will.
So this is the beginning of their feud. This must be like 2015-ish, 2015, 2016.
Because I was saying this today. I said this earlier today, that the only reason anybody pays any attention to this guy is because he's famous. Because if you took just a person, any person, and you had them.
And this isn't correct here. I think Rob misses the mark with this one, because what Trump did is he was talking to people that didn't feel really represented, and they thought Trump was someone that was telling more of the truth. And regardless of what you think of Trump, like, he's a symptom of something that is already there, whether you agree with him or not. So I think that's the part Rob's missing here.
Say some of the things that he says all the time, ban Muslims, Latinos, they're all rapists, and throw 12 million of them out. The way he talks about women, the way he says, you know, we'll bring back torture or give bombs, give nuclear weapons to South Korea and Japan. I mean, everything he says, if it was not a famous person, it would be some crazy crackpot in a park standing on a soapbox that you would walk by. You know, the end is near. Yeah, thanks. And you'd walk by. The mere fact that he's famous and the mere fact that the media is willing to give him all the time because he brings ratings. We are living in a reality-based world right now, the Kardashianization of America and all that. Then you have a guy who they're going to make money. They're going to make money, and that's what they do. And reporters are interested in getting access. So I urge reporters to do their due diligence, pin this guy down, make him, own the things he's saying. Can you imagine for just a second, there's a bunch of people from the KKK or white supremacists.
And know what I also think, regardless of the political discussion here, I think Nick is just envious that his dad can speak fluently like this. His dad is not the most charismatic person around, but he can speak fluently and hold a room. And Nick looks like he's sitting there stewing, being like, well, I can't do that. I can't talk the way my dad talks. I can't be as famous as my dad or my granddad. And that's the kind of thing that eats away at you if you can't accept it. And it sounds like and seems like, especially now that we know the future, that's exactly what was going on with Nick.
Groups who are signing on to your campaign, and you don't say, I don't want these people part of my legions. I don't want them with me. These are hate mongers. These are racists. These are people who are the worst part of humanity. They're coming onto but no, he doesn't do that. He welcomes them with open arms. So we cannot have a person like this. It's very, very dangerous. And I'm curious to see, I believe we'll win. I believe, Hillary will beat him. But if she doesn't win in a landslide, and if she doesn't win in a way that shows where that narrow racist streak is in America, then I think it's a very sad day, because we know that racism hasn't gone away. It's there, but this man has given voice to it. And so we're going to find very carefully how many people really have those feelings and really espouse those things. And because I'm telling you, if you're going with a guy like that, he's a xenophobic, he's a racist, and he's a misogynist, and he's a liar. And so we just hopefully have to defeat him in a big, big way.
Absolutely.
And that didn't happen twice. Oh, Rob. Government is not your friend. I absolutely agree with that. And I agree with George Carlin. Aren't you a public servant? Get me a glass of water. Now, and I also agree, the political parties, two wings of the same bird. They're all bought and paid for by their donors, whoever they are. But I also wanted to check out our buddy, HG Tudor, friend of the channel. He did something in regards to this as well.
Reiner murders. What drove Nick Reiner to kill? Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor.
And so, for those who don't know, H.G. Tudor is someone that I interviewed twice on this channel. He's I guess we'll call him a self-aware narcissist and psychopath, but the difference between him and the community is he's not trying to get better. He just owns who he is. So I'll be curious. I haven't watched this video that he's done yet, but I'm curious what he has to say about the matter. And Mac, did you watch my interviews with him?
On the 14th of December 2025, acclaimed Hollywood director Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle Singer Reiner, were stabbed to death in their Brentwood home in Los Angeles. Rob Reiner, aged 78 at the time of his death, was a legendary filmmaker known for classics like This Is Spinal Tap, Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, and When Harry Met Sally and A Few Good Men, as well as his acting roles in shows like All in the Family. Michelle Singer Reiner, aged 68, was a filmmaker and photographer who met Rob on the set of When Harry Met Sally and married him in 1989. The couple had been together for over 35 years and were described by friends and family as deeply loving and supportive. Their 32-year-old son, Nick Reiner, has been arrested and charged with their murders, turning what authorities describe as a heart-wrenching family tragedy into a high-profile case that has captivated the media and public. Rob and Michelle Reiner shared 3 children: Jake, born in 1991, Nick, born in 1993, and Romy, born in 1997. Rob also had a daughter, Tracy Reiner, from his previous marriage to actress and director Penny Marshall.
Also to note, H.G. Tudor, he often talks about Meghan Markle. He's done a breakdown on Erica Kirk, and he's also done a 10-part series on Candace Owens, of which the conclusion has not been drawn yet. So you can check those out as well.
The family was often portrayed as close-knit, with Rob frequently collaborating professionally with his children. Notably, Nick co-wrote the 2016 semi-autobiographical film, Being Charlie, with his father, which chronicled a young man's battle with drug addiction, a theme drawn from Nick's own struggles.
And that's the movie they were just being talked to about in that interview.
Nick had openly discussed his long-term issues with substance abuse, including cocaine and heroin use, starting in his early teens, leading to multiple rehab stints beginning around the age of 15, periods of homelessness, and ongoing family support. Despite these challenges, sources close to the family emphasized that Rob and Michelle were devoted parents who had helped Nick through his difficulties, and there were no recent signs of violence or severe conflict.
And that's the impression I got too. I thought that Rob and his wife were really trying. It didn't seem like they were like neglectful, at least at this point. Maybe they were in their younger years, but at least now, it didn't seem like that was the case. It seemed like Rob was really trying his best to be a dad. It just wasn't working. There was just a disconnect. And look at him in the bottom right there compared to how he was in that interview. Looks a little more sure of himself, but more crazy. Something's missing there. Like there's something missing behind the eyes. And then compare and contrast that to Rob and his smile there, where at least looks like he's present. Nick, not so much.
Friends described Michelle as funny, acerbic, and kind, while Rob was hailed as a master storyteller and a humanitarian by peers like Billy Crystal and Larry David. On Saturday, December the 13th, in the evening, Rob, Michelle, and Nick attended a holiday party hosted by comedian Conan O'Brien in Los Angeles. Witnesses reported Nick's behavior as erratic and alarming, with him allegedly freaking everyone out. Rob reportedly rebuked his son for inappropriate conduct in someone else's home, though sources close to the family downplayed it as a minor incident rather than a heated argument. This was the last public sighting of the family together. After the party, Nick's movements are under investigation, but he reportedly checked into the Pierside Santa Monica Hotel at some point that day or early the next. On Sunday, December the 14th in the afternoon, a massage therapist arrived at the Rainers' gated Brentwood home for a scheduled appointment, but received no response at the intercom. The therapist contacted the couple's daughter, Romy Reiner, who lived.
And Sarah says H.G. Tudor should be a Disney villain. And you know what? He should probably get some voice actor credit. He should probably try to do that. The problem would be then he wouldn't be able to be anonymous anymore. So that would be that. Those would be good roles. He'd be a good Scar or Shere Khan the tiger.
Nearby. Romy arrived with a roommate, entered the room, and proceeded to the master bedroom where she discovered her father's body. In a state of panic, she ran outside screaming, and her roommate called 911. Romy then re-entered the house to search for her mother and was informed by arriving paramedics that both parents were deceased.
And I thought she found them in bed, is what I thought, but maybe not.
The Los Angeles Fire Department and LAPD responded around 3:30 to 3:40 p.m. to what was initially reported as a medical aid call. Officers secured the scene, searched the property, including a possible guest house where Nick may have stayed, and confirmed no other victims or suspects were present. The home, described as a secure estate with gates, hedges, and surveillance cameras, showed signs of a violent struggle in the master bedroom area. On the evening of Sunday, December the 14th, surveillance footage captured Nick Reiner at an Arco gas station in Exposition Park around 8:20 p.m., about 15 miles from the family home, where he appeared fidgety while purchasing a blue Gatorade sports drink. He was arrested without incident nearby around 9:30 p.m. Investigators quickly identified him as a person of interest based on early evidence from the scene and family interviews. Autopsies conducted by the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office confirmed that both Rob and Michelle died from multiple sharp force injuries consistent with stabbing wounds sustained on Sunday, December the 14th. The attack occurred in the master bedroom of their home, described as gruesome by sources. No murder weapon has been publicly disclosed as recovered, though prosecutors allege a knife was used. The scene was secured immediately, with neighbors later leaving flowers and candles outside the gates in tribute.
Larry David and Billy Crystal, I believe, went over there.
Authorities have not released specifics on the number of wounds or defensive injuries, but the nature of the killings has been characterized as intimate and brutal, typical of intra-family violence. Nick Reiner was formally charged.
And again, those are the kinds of crimes that scream of like passion and anger, not like a merciful shooting, but no, like a knife killing is very intimate. Like there is no, ironically, there's not as much disconnect in a knife attack as opposed to using a gun. So notice how we talked before, how there was that disconnect. Not in the final act here. Not a disconnect there.
On Tuesday, December the 16th, with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The charges include special circumstances for committing multiple murders and a special allegation for using a deadly weapon, a knife, which could result in the death penalty or life imprisonment without parole if convicted. Additionally, under California's Slayer statute, Nick may be barred from inheriting any portion of his parents' estate. He is being held without bail. On Wednesday, December the 17th, Nick made
I thought it was a $4 million bond. That's what I had heard.
his first court appearance in Los Angeles Superior Court, wearing a suicide prevention smock and seated behind plexiglass. The brief hearing, lasting about 5 minutes, did not include a plea. His attorney, Alan Jackson, known for defending high-profile clients like Kevin Spacey, requested and was granted a delay of the arraignment until January 7th, 2026, citing the need to review complex evidence. Nick waived his right to a speedy arraignment and spoke only 3 words: "Yes, Your Honor." Jackson urged the public not to rush to judgment outside the courtroom. Prosecutors Habib Balian and Jonathan Chung, experienced in homicide cases, are handling the case for the Los Angeles District Attorney Office, led by Nathan J. Hockman, who noted the emotional difficulty of prosecuting family murders and said the office would consult the surviving family on pursuing the death penalty. No definitive motive has been publicly disclosed by authorities, and sources close to the family insist there were no obvious warning signs of violence in recent weeks. However, Nick's well-documented history of drug addiction has been highlighted as a potential contributing factor, though not directly linked to the crime. Investigators are focusing on tracing Nick's movements between the party and his arrest, including his hotel stay, where reports suggest the room was full of blood, though this has not been officially confirmed, and any evidence from surveillance footage.
And the question I have is, who's paying for this lawyer that he has? He's got a high-profile lawyer. Does he have some sort of trust that he's pulling from? I mean, I doubt his siblings are going to pay for this, right? Like, will they allow the family lawyer? Oh, yes, defend him in the case. I don't know. Good question, George.
The LAPD, under Chief Jim McDonnell, has described the investigation as active, with Assistant Chief Dominic Choi noting that Nick Reiner became a suspect within hours based on initial leads. The case is being treated as a domestic homicide, with no indication of outside involvement. That provides you with the detailed background into what is understood to have happened so far. But the immediate question arises in respect of the finger of blame being pointed at Nick Reiner is what has driven him to murder both parents. Parricide, the act of killing one's parent or parents, is a rare but profoundly disturbing form of homicide.
Parricide. I saw that in the title of another video. So apparently that's what it's called if you kill your parents. Reminds me of the South Park episode.
It encompasses patricide, killing one's father, matricide, killing one's mother, or double parricide, killing both parents. While parricide accounts for only 2 to 4% of all homicides worldwide, it draws significant attention due to its violation of deep-seated cultural norms around family bonds and filial duty. This phenomenon is distinct from filicide, parents killing children, and is more common among adult offspring than juveniles, with offenders often in their 20s to 50s. Adult parricide, involving offenders aged 18 and older, is heavily influenced by a mix of psychological, social, and situational factors, rather than a single cause. Research identifies patterns such as severe mental illness, histories of abuse, antisocial traits, and enmeshed family dynamics as key drivers. Below, I'm going to consider a number of potential explanations, drawing on empirical studies, motivating factors, psychological conditions, and real-world examples to consider what was the motivating factor or factors that drove Nick Reiner to behave as it is alleged that he has in killing both his parents.
So the sibling, Romy, said that her parents were her best friends. And I buy it. I look at her face, Romy, and she seems like a sweetheart. She seems like a down-to-earth type person, even though clearly she came from wealth. And it seems like she had a good relationship with her parents. Now, again, that doesn't mean that every sibling has the same experience with their parents. I don't know what the other brother said, but that's what she said.
Studies on parricide distinguish between juvenile and adult offenders, with adults more likely to be driven by severe psychopathology rather than immediate abuse. Offenders have been categorized initially into 4 main types. First of all, severely abused offenders. These individuals kill the parent or parents to end prolonged physical, sexual, emotional, or psychological abuse.
See, the Menendez brothers, as George mentioned. And this would be the ones where, in the eyes of the public, it would be the most understanding / forgivable /
In adults, this may manifest as delayed revenge or escape from ongoing control, often after years of dependency. Abuse history is less common in adult cases, around 7 to 15%, compared to juveniles. But when present, it can lead to cumulative trauma, fostering resentment or post-traumatic stress. Motivations include self-preservation or breaking free from enmeshed dysfunctional relationships. 2. Severely mentally ill offenders. This is the most prevalent type among adults, accounting for 67 to 79% of cases in various studies. Offenders often suffer from untreated or poorly managed conditions like schizophrenia, leading to delusions, for instance, believing parents are poisoning them, or hallucinations that command violence. In England and Wales, 74% of parricides involve mental illness, with 79% deemed legally causative, for example, via diminished responsibility defences. Parental proximity, living with or being cared for by parents, exacerbates the risk as family members become nearby targets during psychotic episodes.
So, number 2 here, this seems to fit Nick the best. Severe mental illness plus the addiction. If they're going to use any kind of defense, that's probably what the lawyer's going to do. Is this number 2 one?
3. Dangerously antisocial offenders. These adults exhibit personality disorders, such as antisocial personality disorder or narcissism, viewing parents as obstacles to personal gain. In other words, threats to control. Motivations are often instrumental, for example, nullifying a threat to control and obtaining a residual benefit, such as inheritance or eliminating financial control over the child. Substance abuse, e.g. alcohol or drugs in 24 to 31% of cases, often amplifies impulsivity. Unlike mentally ill offenders, these individuals will lack genuine remorse and, in some instances, will plan the act. 4.
There could be an element of that in there too, honestly. And maybe like Nick didn't know when, but he might have had it in the back of his mind. And does he seem like the type of fella that's going to have remorse? Probably not. Probably not.
Enraged or explosive offenders. Less common but seen in adults. This involves sudden intense rage triggered by arguments, perceived slights, or accumulated frustrations.
And this is a good thing to go over here too. Sheree says mental illness and addiction are separate. Many times they treat the mental illness and then addiction. The problem is a lot of addiction mimics mental health issues. And so it's really hard to know what is what. So ideally what would happen is someone would get clean first. And then after 6 months or so of being clean, you can try to figure out what's going on underneath the hood. But of course, just getting clean for 6 months can be extremely difficult. So often what happens is they'll put you on meds before you're completely clean, just in an attempt to stabilize you. And maybe they'll give a mood stabilizer or an antipsychotic or medically assisted treatment like Suboxone or Subutex. It's so difficult. It's such a difficult situation to be in.
It often overlaps with other types, such as when mental illness or abuse history fuels an impulsive act, or it might be as a consequence of the heated, ignited fury of a narcissist responding to a particular threat to control. Accordingly, those are the 4 main groups with regard to those that commit adult parricide. Demographically, adult parricide offenders are predominantly male, white, middle class, unemployed, or financially dependent, and without prior violent convictions. Gender differences are stark. Sons commit 93% of cases, often killing both parents equally, while daughters, far rarer, primarily target mothers, 61%. Matricides involve older offenders, the mean age is 38, and victims, mean age 69, linked often to caregiving burdens on mothers under patriarchal norms. Weapons are typically opportunistic, sharp instruments in 49 to 62% of cases, especially matricides. Broader societal factors can also include the reduction of mental health services, forcing families, often mothers, into caregiving roles, increasing parental proximity risks. Domestic disputes, 40%, and intoxication, 31%, are common precipitants.
And again, not many people are talking about his wife either. It's mostly about Rob, but she was killed too. So it's a matricide and patricide or parricide.
Underlying issues like marginalization, for instance, ignored carer concerns, play a role. Some motivating factors are, and they're often rarely singular, but often stem from intertwined personal and relational dynamics, such as financial gain or independence. Adults dependent on parents may kill for inheritance, insurance, or to escape control. This is common in antisocial types, where greed overrides bonds. Revenge or escape from abuse. Lingering trauma from childhood abuse can erupt in adulthood, especially if parents continue manipulative behaviors. Delusional or psychotic beliefs. In mentally ill cases, paranoia, for instance, my parents are persecuting me, drives acts often altruistic in intent, for instance, a mercy killing, which occurs in 24% of adult cases. Family conflict and dependency, enmeshed relationships where adult children live with parents, common in 95% of cases. This leads to explosive arguments over money, autonomy, or care responsibilities.
And he fits that mildly. I mean, if he's living in the guest house, he's still there.
Substance abuse and impulsivity. Drugs or alcohol lower inhibitions and exacerbate underlying issues. External stresses, divorce, job loss, health declines can trigger acts with a reduction in emotional empathy, particularly in depressed or enraged offenders. There have been many notable instances of adult parricide. Lizzie Borden, for example, back in 1892, she was accused but acquitted of axing her father and stepmother in Massachusetts. Motivations were tied to inheritance disputes and family tensions, psychological factors including possible resentment from a controlling household, though no formal diagnosis took place. She would most likely be viewed as an enraged or antisocial type. Eric and Lyle Menendez,
The axe, it's like The Shining or Crime and Punishment.
1989, ages 18 and 21. They shot their wealthy parents in California, claiming fear from years of physical and sexual abuse. Convicted of murder, they represent the severely abused type with motivations of escape and self-preservation. Psychological evaluations have revealed PTSD, although there are suggestions of personality disorder also. Dana Ewell, in 1992.
And to note, even if the courts found that there was abuse there in the Menendez case, they're still in jail. So keep that in mind too. Like, it's not always going to be a cut and dry case of self-defense.
Age 21. She hired hitmen to kill parents and sister for a multi-million-dollar inheritance. Driven by greed and antisocial traits with no mental illness noted, exemplifies instrumental motivations in dangerously antisocial offenders. Joel Michael Guy Jr., age 28, stabbed and dismembered his parents during a Thanksgiving visit, motivated by financial gain, inheritance, and rage over their decision to cut support. Psychological factors included possible antisocial personality disorder and impulsivity. With Nick Reiner, he has a history of drug addiction, cocaine and heroin, starting in his teens. Motivations at this juncture are unclear, but it might be linked to his erratic behavior at a party beforehand.
I think the motivations really just are overall bitterness and envy of his father's success. He always felt like he was living in the shadow of his father and grandfather. And that, plus mental illness, plus addiction, and maybe undiagnosed autism as well, just a bad combination. But that's not an excuse. Like, that's not good enough, right? He's just being envious and bitter is not an excuse for murder, of course.
It might be the case that there is substance use disorder, possibly untreated mental health issues. There may be issues of dependency or impulsivity. Alternatively, it might be the case that one is dealing with a disordered individual. At this juncture, insufficient evidence exists to give a definitive view as to what has caused Nick Reiner to engage in the behavior that he has, where he is accused of killing both his parents and engaging in the act of parricide. I have set out for you some notable examples of it taking place, and also some of the factors that could cause it to happen and the personality types that are involved in this type of behavior. I've done so in order to cause you to consider what might be occurring in this instance as you start to hear more and more about the evidence. Naturally, at this juncture, it's too early to make a determination, but it is useful to consider what those factors and underlying personality traits might be. And as more evidence becomes available, we will revisit the situation of Nick Reiner ultimately to make a determination as to what he is and what drove him to allegedly kill both his parents. I'm H.G. Tudor.
So apparently he's going to do a series on that, which could be interesting. Oh, this looks like a big thing here. Let's see what this has to say. Maybe they gave him an ultimatum that night that he felt he couldn't escape and was forced to eliminate them. You never know what was going on in his mind. Ecstasy and cocaine, speed and downers, spiral life. Absolutely. Of course, Danielle. We need your presence in the chat as well as everywhere else in your life.
You're gonna have to bail me out of jail. She has a boyfriend now who's in the military. He's actually dead. She's dying not right. I'm gonna go kill that.
Disturbing comments from.
What did he say about the dog?
I'm gonna go kill that.
Be very careful with people that don't treat animals nicely or want to kill a dog just for barking. Major red flag. And I think also, as I think of this, Rob and Michelle, I think just dangerously naive to the realities of addiction and mental health issues. Too naive, which they shouldn't be, considering they're in Hollywood and there's no shortage of those issues there.
Disturbing comments from Nick Reiner in 2016, nearly a decade before being charged with the murders of his parents, Rob and Michelle.
I got like 100 personality disorder.
Nick, who was arrested,
Got 100 personality disorders, slurring his words as he said it.
Sunday, is accused of using a knife to kill his parents at their LA home. That video, posted to his YouTube account in 2016, now resurfacing in the days following Rob and Michelle's deaths. There's no cohesive plot to the mockumentary, seemingly a riff on the style of his dad's masterpiece.
And fair use out there for this ET story. Fair use.
This is Spinal Tap.
Let's talk a little bit about the history of the group. I was in a group called the Creatures, which was a skiffle group.
We're wondering what.
How long this interview is gonna be?
Just a series of disturbing comments from the 32-year-old playing a character named David.
I ain't gonna tell you my first and last name. Most people know me as Did David.
Nick, who's battled drug addiction and mental illness most of his life, films himself smoking and shows off what appears to be illegal substances throughout the video.
You bought heroin off a transvestite?
His younger sister, Romy, who discovered their parents' bodies after the murders, even makes a cameo, puffing on what appears to be a cigarette.
No introduction. Jenny from the cul-de-sac.
Nick makes a chilling threat against an animal
I'm gonna go kill that.
and seemingly predicted his own fate behind bars, where he currently sits without bail.
And you know what? You're gonna have to bail me out of jail.
Kind of just seems like a spoiled, entitled kid, honestly. Spoiled, immature, just like a rich kid. A rich kid that's a brat that probably manipulated his parents to play the victim, guilt trip them, and to continue doing what he wanted. It just, honestly, it's a case of also, you got to take responsibility and grow up a little bit. And I know mental health makes that 1,000 times harder, but that's what it requires. You got to just like step up. And that's where sometimes the tough love approach is needed. If the soft love approach gets you abused and manipulated, a lot of times the soft love approach enables, unfortunately. And the opposite, of course, would be going to jail. Jail gives you more of the tough love. And again, people can catch what I would consider psychopathic fleas in jail. But at the same point, sometimes people don't want to go back. And so they do turn themselves around. Not every time, of course. Some people get worse in jail. But his life is over now. He's either going to spend the rest of his days in a psychiatric hospital or jail. The death penalty is suspended in California, even though it's not abolished yet. Spoke damage. Parents should have let him be. I think they were trying to let him be for the very most part. There's nothing behind those eyes. I agree, crazy. For a weak child, that life can be hell. Yes. They threatened him with homelessness and he got even. Well, he already had been homeless before, but it was his own doing. He was only homeless, I think, because of his addictions. He was using drugs and being out of control. They should have kept him away. Sometimes you have to let go. I agree with that, Trees, especially hindsight being 2020, but you have to protect the rest of the family. And if you're Rob Reiner, you have to protect yourself and your wife. And now, the rest of the siblings don't have a relationship with their parents anymore because what happened? And let's face it also, no parent wants to think that their child's going to do that to them, right? No parent wants to think that. But again, hindsight being 2020, now it seems obvious, right? No lucky receptors left, psychopathic, antisocial, and addiction. Absolutely, Nina. Welcome to the chat, Nina, by the way. Cat can't do anything if they have no empathy. Yeah, correct. His life was over many years ago, actually, but in the shared fantasy, his life was a hope in motion. Interesting, Ellie. And actually, Ellie, considering the stories you've mentioned before, you can relate to this story, not personally, but in terms of your family. I think there's some overlap there, perhaps. But let's see what else they have out here. Rob Reiner talks about drug addiction.
You don't seem very fiery to me. You seem like you might just...
I get crazy.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
You don't want to set me off.
Yeah.
Were you ever worried that that Nick could shine poorly on your career or something like that?
No. That never crossed my mind. I mean, you know, he's my son. I love him. It doesn't matter. He's more.
Look at him. He looks so nervous here. He's nervous, uncomfortable. Rob's trying to connect, and there's just a wall of impaired empathy, awkwardness, maybe undiagnosed autism. Eesh.
More important than anything that could happen to me.
Charlie, why don't you tell us what you want to thank God for? 6 months of sobriety?
Oh.
Nothing you want to say?
Do I smell like weed?
No.
I think I smell like weed.
Is most of the movie parallel to your life, or almost all of it?
We took from our lives, but it's a fiction. I mean, Nick can tell you because he went through all of this, and I think you took from a lot of different people, didn't you?
Yeah, from my own experiences and from also seeing other people going through it, and also
And so apparently this is the movie being Charlie, apparently.
the varying establishments that I was in. You really get a sense for that whole world. So it's not like copy and pasted, but it's definitely derivative of, reality. Sort of like a 4-year process. Like first we started out with this like slapsticky half-hour comedy pilot that was horrendous, bad jokes and everything. And he looked at it and was like, eh. And then
I just felt he could go deeper. He could go deeper with it. I mean, it was funny, but I felt the subject matter, should allow him to go deeper with it.
Yeah, well, that wasn't said at the time. It was sort of just like, this is trash. But anyways,
so look at him. What does that sound like? Sounds like he was a little butthurt that Rob didn't like it. And so he reframed the whole thing there. But again, it's disagreeable, comes off as a little bit immature, a little bit disrespectful, just someone who's not like an adult. And this is 2016. So if he's 32 now, that means he's 23 here. So yeah, you're young, but still.
We went along and 4 years went by. And then I met up with Matt for a bagel in New York City. And we were like, what about that old script that we were, maybe there was some good stuff in there. We went in and we looked at one page and we were like, this is terrible. And then, I just sort of wrote a new pilot, then got around to him saying, would you like to make a movie out of this? And we were like, we don't know how to do that.
And so here's the other thing, as the chat mentions here, it goes to show you kids can be very different than their parents. Yes, you have the same genes, but within those genes, there's a lot of different variables. So, yeah, not every narcissist has narcissistic parents, for example. People don't like to think that. They think, no, it must have been a narcissistic parent that created it. Not always. Not always. It's a lottery. And the lottery can be vice versa too. A narcissistic parent will have kids that are not narcissists. So it's really just, it can be a free-for-all sometimes.
And then we just tried to do it.
Was it cathartic in a way to revisit the journey?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, we went through a lot. I mean, we didn't do it to be cathartic, but it turned out that that's what happened. I mean, it forced me to understand a lot more of what Nick was going through, and I think it forced him to see what I was going through, and that brought us closer together. And during the process of working on the film, it took about a year just working on the script. The first draft they wrote was like 190 pages. They had thrown everything in that they had gone through.
Manifesto.
Yeah, and as we shaped it and changed it, the whole process brought us closer together because we started understanding each other a little bit better.
I'm not going to listen to you tell me what a drug addict I am.
Tough, Dan.
Careful, I'm one of your constituents now. You wouldn't want to lose the governor's race by one vote.
You can either head back to treatment or live on the streets. It's your choice.
I can't tell exactly what got me into them besides the fact that I thought they were really cool and I just wanted to do them. But I think I heard this question a lot, and I think the only answer I can give for wanting to tell a story like this is that it's even more powerful to tell it about someone who is going through this and they're given everything and they're in an opulent situation and they're still deciding to go to the drugs. And that's more powerful than some, in our opinion, that's the only story that we know. We don't know any other story.
And so here's the other thing. He might also have some of these cluster C personality disorders. These are the ones that don't get talked about very much, but the schizophrenic, those kinds, like that's a different version that we don't hear much about, but they definitely got some delusions in there too, in the old cluster C.
I think, it cuts across socioeconomic boundaries. I mean, if you look what's going on now with the heroin epidemic around the country, it's invading white middle class suburban neighborhoods. So it doesn't really it crosses all economic boundaries, and difficulties that you have are not relegated to only people who are unprivileged.
How bad did it get at home between the two of you?
It's reflected in the movie where the father character talks about how he didn't know what to do, so he listened to anybody who had a desk and a diploma to do exactly what you're talking about. But the truth of the matter is, you have to be who you are. And I made mistakes in that I didn't go with my gut instinct and the feel. And I know Nick better than some expert who's never met him. And I think had I listened to my own instincts, I would have done a lot better by Nick. But you do what you do. You're a parent, and you think, here's my kid running out into the streets, going to get hit by a truck, or you want to keep them safe. So you do what they tell you. You feel you're at their mercy. But what I feel after all of this is it's not about punishing. If somebody is struggling and has difficulties, you don't punish them for that. And I think a lot of these programs feel like the kid is being punished, and I don't think that's a great way to go. I mean, how do you feel about it, Nick?
About what part of it?
About what I was just saying about the idea of the tough love and all of that stuff.
I'm here, so it worked.
It was never about the drugs.
Again, so Nick has a hard time paying attention to his father. It's like almost like he tunes out naturally, and they have to repeat the questions. And he goes, well, tough love worked. I'm here. But did it work? But they also didn't do tough love at times too. I think they enabled at times as well. And also, I was wrong. Cluster A is schizophrenic personality disorders. Cluster C is dependent, avoidant, things like that. Just to correct myself. Yeah, he wasn't listening at all, Michelle. He was in his own world.
All I ever wanted was a
way to kill the noise.
Getting sober is a selfish thing. You gotta help yourself first.
For everyone, it's different. For me, the noise was basically, living in the family that I live in and catching heat for that sort of stuff. And also just
For being a Reiner?
I guess. I mean, people would like to think that's a real bigger deal than it actually is, but it's really like I was an emotional kid who had problems and I just was not so fond of myself. So I kind of, had problems in that way. But in terms of the thing you were saying before, it's like, I think that our relationship was not as it was portrayed in the film. Like there were this sort of like holding.
And that's the indicator too, crazy, right? Did he tune out to everyone or did he tune out just to his dad? That would communicate a lot right there. Was he this way with his mom? Be good to know. I wonder if there's any interviews with him and his mother.
The line and being tough, but like we didn't ever argue like quite like that. I mean, we did, I guess, to a degree, but it was never.
He was fiery. You don't seem very fiery to me. You seem like you might just.
I get crazy.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
You don't want to set me off.
No, some big blow-ups there.
No, we're both.
Oh my goodness. How about foreshadowing there? You don't want to set me off. And then the biggest smile I've seen him give in all of these interviews. Foreshadowing. 9 years later.
We both can get
You
pretty.
don't roll easily either.
No, we can
so-
both get pretty hot, and there were times when we did get hot. But
you weren't like cold like that. He was very loving and compassionate. I just think that he didn't really know what to do.
What about mom?
I didn't go to either of them because neither of them believed a word I said, but it was sort of like comforting to talk to her because she was a little bit more in touch with her emotions and how she felt about it. And he was sort of trying to, follow orders, I guess.
And that was pretty dismissive of what he said about there to his parents.
You went to, how many times did you go to rehab? You said, is it 18 times?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But it had to come from you. So what was rock bottom?
There wasn't one. It's all rock bottom. It all sucked.
When did you, what made you finally make it not a 19th?
I got just sick of it. I mean, it's hard to believe that you wouldn't get sick after 5 of them, but I mean, after 18, I was like, okay, I'm pretty bored of this. Wasn't like I want to go back to.
And I don't know. I mean, did he go into any rehab since then? From 2016 to 2025? I would imagine he was. I would imagine, but I'm not positive.
I was like, I'm sick of this cycle, this using drugs, it being so temporary, the fix, then going back into a place for months on end, then getting out and just, rinse,
This
wash,
being my
repeat.
life.
Yeah.
Do you believe, and they'll tell you, you're gonna die if you continue on this way? Do you think you would die, or did you still feel invincible?
No, I mean, of course, there's that level of feeling that way, but I was, the rate I was going was probably not great. Gonna end up great.
Did you feel like, did you ever get close?
Yeah. Sure.
How do you manage it now? Do you?
Again, I don't trust these answers. If I was his therapist or whomever, I'd want it, dude, like level with me. Like, what are you really thinking and feeling? With people like him, they have a facade. And when they don't connect to their parents, the parents don't understand them, they can have a whole different version of themselves that the parents have no idea about. And it's only around certain people will they let their mask off. So notice the energy difference between how he is with his dad versus how he was with his sister. Notice with his sister, he sounds much more confident, sure of himself, a little more mask off. I want to go kill that dog. So who he really is, he's hiding from his dad. Maybe you could say he doesn't feel comfortable showing it. Whatever the reason, he's not showing his true self there. But it's something to pay attention to. So if you're a therapist, you got to get them to be them and to let like the mask off and to say, okay, who are you? Keep it real. And then you'll know it. When someone's truly keeping it real, you'll sense it. But some people, they just won't. They won't. And if they don't let you in, there's nothing anyone can do to help you. You can't force anyone to change. You can't give anyone the willingness to change. You can't force anyone to open up either.
Go to AA meetings regularly, and
I found that those weren't as helpful for me as things like staying active and like, you know, replacing like not just, replacing the activity that you were doing before with stuff that's healthier, like working out, if you can afford it, going to a therapist,
If you can afford it. Of course he can afford it.
well as like, you know, having a good, you know, support group of friends. I have that, which is lucky, and not everybody has that. And I have some supportive parents.
And you also found work that you I mean, you found his writing, and that's something that, you know, he likes to do, and he works with his friends doing that. So
Can you be in a room now where people are drinking or smoking pot or something, or do you consciously avoid those situations?
No, I want to be there when they're doing that, because I don't want to feel alienated like I'm some, you know, special case, or I don't want to feel any different or alienated. I just want to be part of the crew again, you know, and just not do that other stuff.
And again, AA and NA would say, no, that's a bad idea. If you go to the barber shop, it's only a matter of time before you get a haircut. So that's what I would say about that. And I think AA and NA, at the very least, it helps you to start understanding some of yourself. And you have a community of people that are similar to you for the most part. And as long as you're honest, you can find people that are on your same wavelength. And that can be amazing for your growth. And people that don't go to those places, though, you know, they're kind of missing out on that a little bit.
Nick, what do you do when that little voice comes in and says, yeah, let's do something, let's use or something? How do you get over that?
I just replay what's happened every single time when I decide to give into that voice, and it's never been good. So it's just like, if I look at it from like a mathematical standpoint, the statistics are like 0 for it going well. So
yeah.
Were you
so fast forwarding the tapes, they call that in the rooms. And also autistic people, they like numbers a lot of times, and they'll see things in equations and with statistics, as he said. So that could make sense. I mean, honestly, he gives me some like Asperger's type vibes, honestly. Although there's no such thing as Asperger's now. It's just included in autism spectrum disorder. But it would be Asperger's is what I would say.
ever worried that that Nick could shine poorly on your career or something like that?
No, that never crossed my mind. I mean, you know, he's my son. I love him. It doesn't matter. That he's more important than anything that could happen to me. I care more about him. He's most important, and Jake and Romy and my family, they're the most important. So
look at this picture here. He just looks to the far right. He's not there. Disconnected, maybe using their, just gone. As opposed to the rest of the family, connection, disconnection. And the sister there, she's still more connected than him. We'll put it like that.
That doesn't factor in.
What is your advice, Rob, to parents who might be in this situation with a kid that's struggling?
I think listen to your kids. Go, you know, try to spend as much time you can with your kids. Try to understand your kids, and don't punish them, because this is my opinion. In my opinion, the reason they're taking, whether it's drugs or alcohol or gambling, whatever they're doing it because there's a pain. There's something inside they don't feel good. They don't feel good about themselves, and they're self-medicating. So try to understand why it is they're not feeling good. Kids that don't use drugs at all, just going through teenage years, is difficult. So you have to just stay with them and try to understand as best you can. And whatever you do, don't be punitive, because I don't think that helps at all.
Well, and that's what George was saying too. But here's the thing. Listening is great. I think seeking first to understand rather than to be understood, that's a great way to go. Absolutely. But there also comes a point where you have to also have boundaries in there too. And each person's different. Some people do respond to punitive measures. Not everyone, but some people do. Some people go to jail and it turns them around. Not everyone, of course, but it is possible. And sometimes the addicts can convince people that, oh, I need more of the coddling approach. I don't need any punitive measures. But sometimes, I mean, they call it a disease in AA and NA, and they'll say your disease will say all sorts of wild things to get you sick, and to keep you using. And other addicts and alcoholics, they know that. They know that's a possibility. But it seems like Rob here, a little bit naive, and it's turned into a cautionary tale, I believe. But I don't fault him per se. I think he's really trying. He's really trying to do all the right things. He's just learning that if the other person's not willing, nothing's going to happen. You can't change him.
What's for you that mom and dad did and what didn't?
You know, everything. What worked is when they kind of like were like, you know what? They turned their back and they were like, you know, you got to figure it out for yourself. You're an adult now. Like, this is getting old. Like, you know, sort of not like we don't care, but just like, you know.
Nick, if Dad said from the very beginning, God, I love you. I think it seems to be in terrible pain, and I hope you work it out. No, I always love you. And do you think you would have, instead of anything, it would have been a shorter journey? Maybe not 18 rehabs, you might have gotten there quicker, or no?
I think it needed to happen the way it happened. I was a real like nutcase. I was crazy. And I just, it was more than drugs. It's really always about more than that. And I needed a lot of that sort of discipline.
That's telling there too. It was more than drugs. So what do you think he's referring to? Mental illness? Undiagnosed Asperger's? What is it? And here's the other part. Dr. George Simon would say character. Maybe there's some character issues here too. The character issues are the bitterness, enviness, being jealous of others, not growing up, being childish, emotionally immature. That's all character. And again, it's tricky because mental health, addiction, and character, they all intertwine along with personality disorders, along with being on the spectrum. And it can be a mess. It's a mess to untangle it all. It's only by a miracle I was able to untangle it all. But clearly, not everyone's able to untangle it so well. I mean, some people die. Some people kill themselves. Others.
Life goes on. Life happens. Things flare up.
Life. Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, it's you know, the movie doesn't, it's not happily ever after the movie, but it is hopeful that, you know, that Charlie's moving in a good direction, that the father is starting to understand Charlie a little bit better. And I think it's, you know, it's like Nick says, it's a process. It goes on and you live your life.
Thank you for sharing your story and sharing your film. And congratulations, Nick, on writing a great movie.
All right. So, I mean, I just think Rob Reiner doesn't really understand it. Like, he doesn't understand addiction truly. Doesn't understand mental illness in this way. I still think some of his movies are good. I like Stand By Me. Stephen King really likes Stand By Me. But it's one of those things where we all talk about with narcissism, right? If you haven't been a victim of narcissistic abuse, it's just really going to be difficult for people to understand it unless they've been through it. And I think it's the same. It's the same for addiction. It's the same for mental health. So you can try to understand it. You can try to learn from the professionals and by the book, but it's just going to be different. It's going to be different than actually living through it yourself. It was very telling when Nick mentioned that he was not fond of himself. Yeah, some self-loathing there. Absolutely. It almost seems like Nick is disgusted by Rob's help and kindness. Yeah, I get a little bit of that impression too. I don't think he likes his dad. I don't think he likes him. He doesn't like him. No connection. And when that happens, anything can happen at that point. Once there's disconnection, then all bets are off. And you don't really know who you're dealing with anymore. I mean, there was some of that in my family too. My little brother, he had some of that with my dad as well, where there was just a disconnect. And some people just don't see it. People in the boomer group in particular, they're just not very good. They weren't very good at seeing that kind of thing. I think his father missed the boat, but when you're away working sometimes, you do not see it. Absolutely true. Son was obviously abused by who? By who, though? By him or other people? If people tell you they don't like you, get the F away from them forever. That's what I would do. Yeah, you can't fake connection is right. It's either like you click with people or you don't. And that's something I was thinking about with family the other day, too. You're not going to be compatible with everyone in your family. It's one of the reasons why family relationships are so difficult, because you don't choose your family. And you're not always going to be compatible with your family, despite the blood connection, despite having the similar genes. You're going to be different. You're going to have different temperaments, different personalities, different likes and dislikes, and it makes it tough. It just does. Yeah, it's a good way to put it. Different wavelengths, different frequencies, I would say. Rob was allegedly abused by his father, Carl. He probably sexually abused his family. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to throw that out there, but could. I don't tend to think so, though, with Rob. I think he might have other stuff going on. I don't think with his children, though. Number one. What does that say? I get feral leans. I don't know what that means. Also, it's because familiarity breeds contempt. Absolutely. My sociopath's narcissistic father drove the family apart with his triangulation moves. Yeah, I could see that too. Absolutely. Remember how he used to criticize Trump's kids? Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And he was a big Trump hater. There's no denying that. No denying that at all. You can see what Dr. Grande has to say. Look at this. Horrible.
Oh, this is Dr. Grande. Today, I will offer an update on the case of Rob Reiner. I will start with a brief background of this case, move to an updated timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Rob Reiner was a famous actor and director. He first became popular playing the character Michael Stivic on the 1970s sitcom On the Family. He then went on to direct several successful movies in the 1980s and 90s. For example, this is Spinal Tap, Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Misery, A Few Good Men, The American President, and Ghosts of Mississippi. Rob was married to a photographer named Michelle. They had 3 children, Jake, Nick, and Romy. Their son Nick, who was born in 1993, had mental health and substance use difficulties. He had periods of homelessness and was estranged from Rob and Michelle, but eventually reconciled with them. By 2020,
hollow. There's a hollow look there. If that's Nick, that's maybe the healthiest I've ever seen him, if that's Nick. Or is that his brother?
25, Rob, Michelle, and Nick lived together in a $13.5 million mansion located at 255 South Chadbourne Avenue in the Brentwood neighborhood of Los Angeles, California. Rob's daughter, Romy, lived in a house across the street. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On Saturday, December 13, 2025, 78-year-old Rob Reiner.
So we can pause this. So what's it called here? The behavior panel.
Today we're going to talk about Nick and Rob Reiner. Now, I think everybody knows what's happened. Nick has been accused of murdering his father and his mother. And Greg, tell us about the videos we're going to watch.
Yeah, so this video is from 9 years ago when there was a movie called Being Charlie that they had both worked on together. It's an opportunity for us to see how did they actually interact. And by this time, I believe Nick had been in rehab many, many, many times for drug use. And we're going to get to see how did they respond to each other in a setting that is comfortable for one of them and not necessarily comfortable for the other.
What did you think? What was the toughest for you? What do you think, Nick?
It wasn't very tough. I mean, it was pretty nice experience for me. I don't really think it was like tough at all.
Really?
I mean, of course it was a little bit, but
I mean, we did,
Very uncomfortable.
we did get into fights over things, but ultimately it forced us to make the film better. I mean, we get into issues, and I would see, he would. The whole process for me, I can just speak for myself. It did make me understand him a lot more, and I think it made me a better father. Hopefully, it did. I don't know, but I think that, and you'll see it in the film. What happens is, your kid, if your kid is going through rough times, the parent is, your main job is to keep your child safe. So I would do anything. I felt at a loss, so I would do anything that, as we say in the film, anybody with a desk and a diploma, I would listen to them. And the whole idea of tough love, and you have to be a certain way, and it's not my nature, it's not the way I am built, but I went and did that, and I think that at the end of the day, I know my child better than an expert does, and I probably should have trusted.
False. The fatal flaw there. He did not know his son better than an expert in this case.
My own instinct, and that's one of the things I did learn about the whole experience.
I think the bonding came not from the story itself, but from the fact that we were working on a movie together, and I could see him in his, I would think, in the form that he could express himself the best, which is making movies, because he has so much experience. And so seeing that sort of turned me around to be like, okay, I should probably
No, sorry, I'm responding.
I should probably shut up and listen to him, because he knows a lot more about this. He knows I don't know anything, so I'll learn whatever he has to teach me.
I just think that's such a fascinating thing to say, that like your father, who you would always want to be at his best as your father, may be a type of person who's at his best when he's making movies, and that makes him more understandable or relatable as a father to you, which is so fascinating to me.
Yeah, it really clicked for me, because we didn't bond a lot as a kid. Like, he really liked baseball, I like basketball, and he could watch that with my brother, but baseball. But I just, when I saw him do that, and it was something that I'm interested in, I was like, wow, like he really knows a lot, and like it made me feel closer to him and be like, yeah.
You're like, wow, my dad's Rob Reiner.
I never had thought about it.
So, how long do they let it play before they start talking?
And then,
yeah, it didn't cross your mind, right?
Never.
No.
Never watched A Few Good Men. Didn't see that one.
No.
That's a lot of discomfort, don't you think?
Crazy.
Yeah.
And we're watching a guy who is a world-class communicator, kind of, I think, unconsciously downgrading his own authority in the presence of his own child here. And I think it's interesting that if you watch the movie, there's so many themes that only hint. They don't explicitly show it, but they only hint at this kind of relationship.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think a lot of the,
And that's what we mentioned before too, right? I was saying that he was trying to give his son more of the credit. He was downplaying his light to try to make Nick's shine brighter. He was trying to give Nick more of the credit, which I think is an admirable thing to do. But here's the thing. If you need to try too hard to do that, and it's not happening organically in the eyes of the public, it might backfire.
discomfort is because he's afraid he'll be, he will be towering over his son or whatever, since he's such a famous guy for being a director and is so good at that.
Well, I think he's walking on eggshells, but I don't think he's necessarily smart about what you just said. Because I think this happens, I always say, interrogation is one thing, but I spent 25 years in corporate America and banking now. People with a power differential often don't notice subtle cues from people who are in the room with them, that they're feeling inadequate or they're feeling. Before this video started, before this clip started, this kid had to be prodded to say, hey, he's asking you a question. He was so detached.
Yeah. It feels to me like Reiner is railroading him into answers and into even speaking. I'd say is it Nick? Nick, yeah. He's definitely not self-assured. And that
Clearly not self-assured, no.
that's an interesting phrase, isn't it? Self-assured. He's not assured of who he is. He's easily shut down. I mean, the interviewer just makes a noise and he shuts himself down. He says, I don't know anything. He's easily, he backs down on, he said, it's not been very tough at all. And then the interviewer says, well, really? He goes, well, yeah, a little bit tough. So he instantly changes his mind. He won't stick to his stuff. Whereas, I mean, it's interesting. Reiner's very self-assured. Even if he is on eggshells here, like the difference between the two is massive.
It's a hard thing for us collectively, I would imagine. You guys, when you go to a party or you're in someplace, because we're outgoing most of the time, we don't notice when people feel uncomfortable as often, unless you turn on what we do, because we think everybody's comfortable until we pay attention.
Well, and especially around your kids as well, because it's easy for the parent to, or some parents, I'll speak for myself, to dominate the situation just because of the nature of yourself and the child, and not let that child, be explicitly go into these situations and go, I'm going to make a point of letting the child, speak as much as.
So here's the thing. I'm thinking, like, if I were a parent, this is what I would do. First, the emotional safety piece is number one, because if you're not fostering an atmosphere of emotional safety, everything else doesn't matter from there. They're not going to trust you. They're not going to feel safe with you, and they're going to hide themselves, and you're not going to know who they really are. Emotional safety is number one. When you can at least get to that point, and some people never do, by the way, they never get there. But when you get to that point, you can then begin to understand what they need. All right, what's an emotional deposit for him in this situation? What's an emotional withdrawal for him in this situation? What's uncomfortable for him? What does he like? What does he not like? What's the kind of uncomfortable that maybe would actually be good for his growth? What's the kind of uncomfortable that is not good for him in any way? But it takes this level of understanding where it goes to show you, you can be an expert in one area, but your expertise in one area does not always carry over to every other area. It can be siloed in a way, which can confuse people.
As possible. By the way, I will say this as well. If I was trying to keep my kids safe, the last place I would ever put them is a movie set, ever. So obviously none of this deserves, however they were killed, and if they were killed by their son. But that the film industry is not a place to keep anybody safe.
What I thought was interesting here was the low engagement of his brow with all that's going on. We see a little bit, but it's just every now and then a little pop right there in the middle. That's about it.
So here's the thing, though. I think Rob wanted to include him in this because I think maybe he correctly assessed that his son was envious of his success and his father's success. So Rob's thinking to himself, well, what can I do to kind of level the playing field here? Let me try to give my son his own success. And maybe that's bad framing, right? He can't give it to him. Like, it truly has to be earned. That's why people get resentful of nepotism so much, because the implication is it wasn't earned. Like, when it comes to true success, it has to be earned. So I get what Rob was trying to do there. But, I mean, had anyone heard of this movie before this? I had not. Have you heard of the movie, chat? I haven't.
I was going to say something about that. This Nick has a documented history of heavy use of heroin and cocaine and meth over the years. And that stuff, especially in marijuana, when it's used by an adolescent, can cause permanent dopamine dysregulation and this thing called anhedonia, where we can't feel pleasure. Yep. And it lowers emotional expressiveness extremely, especially that eyebrow movement. And we know that, like, chronic opioid stimulant leads to this blunted affect, kind of zoning out. So it's the brain's reward and emotion centers getting just fried out and make somebody look super detached, even when they're totally recovered. They're not on the drug anymore.
Well, and
it's time out. So this is a good question. I'll put it up here. So someone says, why was Nick allowed to be homeless at age 15? Parents are required by law to take care of their offspring until 18. Seems too little too late after Nick is well into adulthood. And here's the thing about that. Imagine if a sibling is maybe SAing another sibling or trying to off another sibling. That could very well be a reason for homelessness right there. Because those kinds of things, they absolutely happen, by the way. They happen. And it puts the parents in a terrible position where, of course, no one wants to make their children be homeless, but sometimes there's some awful things going down. Or maybe they're robbing the house blind. I mean, what do you do? what do you do? I don't know.
Depression can take away your forehead movement, a lot of forehead movement. If you've been around anybody who's clinically depressed, who's seriously depressed, the forehead's the first thing to go. They're just blah, 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 blah. And it's very difficult to watch.
At the same time, the eyes are moving around the face. There's little, and it seems like there's a lot of unexpressed thoughts there. And if you, and listen, I'm not the kid's dad and I'm not the kid's, therapist. So, but it feels to me like if you just said, okay, let me sit with you for a bit and you tell me in your own time what's happening, what your experience was, you might get something out of him. But in that situation there, there's too much. It's too much happening.
Hey panelists, quick intro. I want you to meet Jess, our sponsorship specialist. Hey Jess.
Hi, Mark.
Jess, thanks for letting me do some red tape is to open a button so you can browse.
Where you go for information, and then look for where you go when I ask you a hard question. Does it deviate? What we see him do twice here is downright eye accessing, which we typically associate with emotion. In most people, it's look, I've interrogated a lot of people, worked with a lot of people, and I see it all the time, looking down into your right. We see it twice. When he first starts asking him questions and he says something, when Rob says, this is a question for you, we see that downright eye accessing. Next time is when he talks about his father watching baseball with the brother. That's not a red flag, but it is a flag for us to look and see, is there a pattern? I mean, there could be rub between, that shows family dynamic. So you start to see
also, when you get that anhedoniatic personality type, they have a problem connecting with anybody because nothing excites them.
And so anhedonia, for those who don't know, is when you don't get any pleasure from anything. It's like a depression in a way, except worse. And yeah, when you have anhedonia, it's going to be very difficult to connect with anyone. So any help in any case, you're going to have to get that mental health in order somehow, because the mental health is going to prevent connection a lot of times. And then there's many layers of mental health because things can be comorbid, which makes it even more difficult, right? You could have a mood disorder plus a personality disorder. And there's a lot. Or you can have a neurodevelopmental issue going on. There's so many things that it could be.
I'll say, oh, no kidding. Tell me about that. You don't hear that kind of thing going on, especially with him. He doesn't really ask any questions other than, what did you just say? Or I didn't understand that when you repeated, that kind of thing. So his interest seems very low in everything. As we go through these, you'll see more of that, people watching. But so that's what I noticed in here was that anhedoniatic not bad, what do you call it? It's sort of like a haze that's on him. You know what I mean? I don't know if anhedoniatic is a word, but I was using it when I make fun of somebody and they're being boring.
Well, you're right. He doesn't really understand Nick doesn't really understand the nature of the situation. And we'll see that later on as well, that he's there to entertain and your energy should be up for that because you're trying to sell your film. And not having anything to say is not the way of selling the film.
I think this is his first time doing that is why. That's why he's so uncomfortable. He's always got the mic down here, then brings it up to talk and puts it down and brings it. And he's goofing around with it all the time. I think he's just uncomfortable.
Do you think there's some baggage associated with the whole business his father's in and distancing and all? Because watch him play with that mic and then look around at where he's at and go into internal thought, look down to his left and then kind of stare into space. There's all kinds of something going on in his head.
Yeah, we'll see a lot with the mic later on. And that in this situation, the mic is a key instrument to speak to the audience. So he's messing around with his key instrument there of expressing to us what he thinks about this film.
Yeah,
it's a good start.
Yeah, let's go to the next one.
Thank you to Thrive. Good evening, Jared and Black Sheep. It's a great flock of black sheep in here tonight. I appreciate everyone's support here. And thank you to Thrive.
Okay, I give you that one, Chase. Nicely done.
What did you think? What was the toughest for you? What do you think, Nick?
It wasn't very tough. I mean, it was a pretty nice experience for me. I don't really think it was like tough at all.
Really?
I mean, of course it was a little bit, but
I mean, we did get into fights over things, but ultimately it forced us to make the film better. I mean, you know, we get into issues, and I would see, you know, he would. The whole process for me, I can just speak for myself. It did make me understand him a lot more, and I think it made me a better father. Hopefully, it did. I don't know, but I think that, and you'll see it in the film. What happens is, you know, your kid, if your kid is going through rough times, you know, the parent is, your main job is to keep your child safe. So I would do anything. I felt at a loss, so I would do anything that, as we say in the film, anybody with a desk and a diploma, I would listen to them. And the whole idea of tough love, and you have to be a certain way. And it's not my nature. It's not the way I am built, but I went and did that, you know. And I think that, you know, at the end of the day, I know my child better than an expert does. And I probably should have trusted my own instinct. And that's one of the things I did learn about the whole experience.
I think the bonding came not from the story itself, but from the fact that we were working on a movie together, and I could see him in his, I would think, in the form that he could express himself the best, which is making movies, because he has so much experience. And so seeing that sort of turned me around to be like, okay, I should probably
No, sorry, I'm responding.
I should probably shut up and listen to him, because he knows a lot more about this. He knows I don't know anything, so I'll learn whatever he has to teach me.
I just think that's such a fascinating thing to say, that like your father, who you would always want to be at his best, as your father may be a type of person who's at his best when he's making movies, and that makes him more understandable or relatable as a father to you, which is so fascinating to me.
Yeah, it really clicked for me, because we didn't bond a lot as a kid. Like, he really liked baseball, I like basketball, and he could watch that with my brother, but baseball. But I just, when I saw him do that, and it was something that I'm interested in, I was like, wow, like he really knows a lot, and like it made me feel closer to him and be like, yeah.
You're like, wow, my dad's Rob Reiner.
I never had thought about it, and then
Yeah, it didn't cross your mind, right?
Never.
Never watched A Few Good Men. Didn't see that one.
No.
Nick, how involved were you with the casting and everything? I mean, this kid is amazing in the film. He's an incredible lead. I've never seen him.
People know Nick Robinson.
He was given good.
Yeah, he's a really good actor. I mean, he was in that Kings of Summer, and he's in Jurassic World. He's a great actor, and Nick was there for all the casting. You know, all of the auditions.
I was sitting there, but
yeah, but you always gave your opinion.
I was like, I saw that girl Morgan Taylor on Homeland, and I think during the season she like went to rehab or something, and I was just like, oh, she's a perfect rehab girl.
Yeah,
that was the only.
He pushed for Morgan Taylor like crazy. Yeah.
He kind of got our sensibilities. So did Devin, from just hanging out with us. Try to help him with that in that sense.
Chase, what did you think about all that? I know. I couldn't believe it either. So I thought that was interesting, because his dad's sort of trying to pump him up, but they're not talking about all the horrible stuff that must have happened when he was in rehab and doing all those kind of things, you know, because there's a lot. And he's done a whole movie about his kid going through this process and the things that they've experienced together. And there's got to be a lot of emotion in there between them both, having thought about that when they bring it. Well, you know, I knew that we had to do something. And that kid's thinking, I bet you, yeah, you did. I remember y'all tried to kick me out of the house and things like that. All those things, I'm sure, are coming up.
Well, and that is something that he'll actually talk about. Because
And again, if he's still resentful about that, Nick, that's a good sign that he's not really over it, right? Someone who is in a good spot. Like, what I would think of it is this: okay, it wasn't perfect. They tried, maybe it didn't work, but they did what they thought was right. And now you wouldn't say this in the case of abuse per se, but in this case, when someone's trying to help you get clean, like, it's a tough situation, and it's easy to judge how someone handles that when they're not in that position. But a good sign, and what they would say to you in AA and NA is, okay, it's up to you to take care of your side of the street. Like, you're not there to change your parents. You're not there to be their judge, jury, and executioner. You're there to be there for you. And the better you are for you, the better you're doing, the better things will go. You're only in charge of how you see things, not anyone else. So what they would consider some of what Nick has is stinking thinking. It's the addict thinking. And the addict thinking keeps people stuck. It's not good.
Because he gets really exercised once, really excited once he's going, I taught this actor what it was like being a junkie. So, you know, there's some excitement around that, and the rest of it is like, no, I was just in the room. I had no opinion. I had no agency at all. But I do have agency when I'm a drug addict. I do know what I'm doing around
And
that.
the facial expressions he's making are not big at all. I mean, there's not. That's the thing. And everybody's going to go, oh, he's autistic. I know he's this, or he's a psychopath. I know he's all that. And you can't tell any of that from this conversation.
Now, you can't make the diagnosis for sure. I'm someone that's autistic, though, and I get the sense he's got some elements of that. I'm not diagnosing him with it, but I can certainly pick up on some of those vibes. And Sam Vaknin would say, and a lot of people don't like this, but Sam Vaknin would say autistic people can have some psychopathy stuff in them too. People don't like that, but that's what Sammy Boy has said. Not my words.
But that's going to come up. But I just think it's interesting. I hate to say, you know, his brain was fried, but there comes a point where, like you were talking about, Chase, where your brain just goes, you know what, you've used all this up. We've worn this part of it out. These things don't function properly anymore. You just wail on them all the time.
Well, and your
Especially
pleasure
for drugs,
centers
you
are
can
like
restructure those things for you.
Right. So a couple of things for me. Anybody notice anything odd about Rob? I mean, everybody knows Rob Reiner. We've watched him since the 70s. He's been in front of a camera and behind the camera. He's a passionate dude usually. There's not much passion in this. Not much at all. If you see it, he's calm. I think it's contained, and I think these guys, just watching, every time Nick wants to say something, he'll pause. Mark, to your point earlier about him not having confidence, he tries to throw in an answer that could have been a good tag team for them. Hey, it was good writing. Would have been a good joke. But he gets stepped on as his dad, who is now in the director role, because we call the director role forward, not the dad role. He starts to then talk about how great an actor this kid is. And he's doing a good thing, I think, but the kid stops cold in the middle.
That's because the kid doesn't know how to look at somebody. He's uncomfortable in public situations, I think, any kind of social situation. So he hasn't really.
I agree. He's very uncomfortable in the social situations. And when you're uncomfortable, it makes it 100 times harder to be socially calibrated. It makes it 100 times harder to recognize what other people are feeling when you're so caught up on how you are feeling. It's the kind of a non-narcissistic way to appear like you lack empathy, I would say. Because if you're just so caught up on yourself, what are you not doing? You're not putting yourself in someone else's shoes. You're not thinking about what they think and feel at all.
Really learn how to look at somebody and let them know that you're looking at them. It's your turn to talk. Greg, you'll always start doing this, so we all know to get ready for you. Your hand always goes up. Mark, sometimes you'll see him puff up a little bit and start talking, and the same for Chase. Chase usually doesn't. He just waits for somebody to say, hey, Chase, what about whatever, and then I'll just blurt out in the middle of anything and start talking. But this kid, he doesn't know how to make that eye contact. It's hard to make eye contact down here for us, but he doesn't know how to look at somebody and wait. So they'll see him go, oh, he's got something to say, and pause.
True. Good observation.
He doesn't understand those cues.
And he only takes up space when someone hands it to him.
Yeah.
And the question's directed to Nick, but Rob immediately starts answering. He listing the credits and framing this lead actor's credentials. He owns the space before Nick is really allowed to step in. And Nick is kind of displaced by this. And I wonder if this would have been vastly different if it was just Nick and some other guy, if his behavior would have been super different. I think all the statements are just humor adjacent.
And again, that's something to check out here too. So we're at 2158. Is there any interviews where it's just Nick? Huh, that's me. And maybe this is part of the problem for him too. He's always with his dad, which also contributes to it, right? Maybe no one thinks that, oh, Nick's not good enough on his own. His dad always has to be there. Maybe that contributes to the resentment, perhaps, I would say.
this lead actor's credentials. He owns the space before Nick is really allowed to step in, and Nick is kind of displaced by this. And I wonder if this would have been vastly different if it was just Nick and some other guy. If his behavior would have been super different. I think all the statements are just humor adjacent. They're not. They have no emotion in them. This is a movie about addiction, a father and son, and this is the father and son who made it together. Like, the audience is there to hear the emotional impact this had on both of them, and a movie producer should know that that's the goal of this thing, is to get people emotional, get them to watch. But he's not even talking about himself, and no one names the core issue. The story is about Nick's addiction. Nobody's talking about it. The character's based on Nick. Nick picked somebody who looked like rehab for the movie, and neither of them says that directly. And I think it's just strange, really strange to me.
What we can't see is family behavior patterns, and people trigger each other, and they get into these rich.
I think what also was happening was Rob was trying to give Nick the chance to step up and talk, but he wasn't, which maybe made Rob uncomfortable. So he felt the desire to fill the silence. I think there's an element of that going on. If Rob was actually like butting in and answering for Nick in some cases, I mean, that wouldn't be good. I didn't necessarily pick up on that side of it as much, though.
Rituals and dance. Speaking of which, next week is Christmas. We're in the holiday season. You're going to go meet people that trigger you, and you need to pay attention to what they do that causes you to do something that causes a cascade. And that could easily be why we see him contained around his dad, because if at home they have escalation because of things, you could see a difference. And I'm not beating up Rob by any stretch, or either one of them, because human behavior is human behavior, and there's often a rub between parents and children. This is just a pronounced rub that we know how it ends, and it's awful.
So, Greg, I'm going to signal that I want to go by bringing up these scissors. I don't have a microphone.
Are you threatening me?
Yeah, I don't have a microphone. But I just want to point out what Nick is doing, which is...
Greg might wish he needed some scissors on his head.
This is essentially a regulator. It tells everybody, I'm going to speak now, I'm going to hold court, and when I take that away, then it's not me anymore. But he keeps flopping it around and being indecisive with it. So again, that body language, that use of that indecisive use of the regulator of the microphone, again, comes across as unself-assured, whereas Rob Reiner is, it's there most of the
Mark,
time, just saying, I'll be doing the tour. Yeah. Well, clearly your turn. Now you have the can.
I don't think he understands. I think it's he never uses a microphone or anything like that. That's what I think.
I think you might be right, Scott.
So
I think you're wrong, but
I think it's just discomfort with that, because he's not used, so he's goofing around with it, and he's sort of learning it, I guess, as he's going along, as odd as that sounds. You all remember, it's like when the first time you go out.
An interesting thing would also have been when Nick was on his drug of choice, or maybe if he's drunk. What was he like then? What is mask off Nick really like? And maybe it's more of what you saw with him and his sister. But I bet you'd learn much more. Like, what do we say? Get them drunk and see what happens? That would have been interesting with Nick. Perhaps also dangerous, of course, as well.
Up, you give a talk, how odd that is, how weird that feels. Now you go give one, don't even remember what you talked about because it's so nothing. So that's what it's like for Rob Reiner and that guy who's the interviewer. But this kid's never had one before, so he doesn't want to bring it up. Only when he wants to talk does he bring it up. He's not ready. He doesn't hold it there so he can just start talking.
Well, in fact, if you go watch this sorry, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah,
I should have held up my...
Yeah, please, come on.
Get a mic.
I think he's probably done a bunch of interviews and had a mic. Yeah, I think, yeah. I think so. I think he's done.
Why do you think? Why do you think that? What tells you that? I'm missing it.
Well, because he's not so uncomfortable that he doesn't know exactly what's happening. He just doesn't know. He's not aware of how to treat the tool because his mind is clearly somewhere else. He's disengaged with
maybe dissociating a little bit, dissociating from uncomfortable feelings, perhaps.
He understands what the tool is for. He's not there with it on the table or down here somewhere talking. He knows it has to come up, but it's disengaged. It's flaccid.
Well, and Mark, if you would go watch, I'm holding my mic up too. So if you would go watch the entire interview, you'll hear him say that his father is not a great communicator at home. So this is a person, this is a role. We all have that role. We all have a role at home and a role outside. If you meet us and we're, having a bad day, we might not be quite the same people you see on screen always, just because humans have more than one role in their life. And I think because his father is so comfortable, that could even be even more, now what does your dad expect from you? He's probably told you what he expects and how you need to work and all that before you show up, because you've got a different relationship with your father and a director of a movie you're working on than you would with people. We're the four of us come at this whole thing with different angles. We came from different parts of our lives. That's why we're respectful of each other's opinion. And we don't usually say, well, you're wrong, and here's why. We say, well, my experience has been X. But it's different when you got that power differential.
So this is a good thing to go over too. Danielle said Nick certainly didn't like it when Bill Hader set a boundary with him and told him to leave them alone. It was a private conversation. If Nick is maybe vulnerably narcissistic, you can give him a little bit of a narcissistic injury as a perception of criticism and being left out, a threat to control. Not very good. Not very good.
Yeah, y'all ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
You all hear this? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Everybody hear me?
Speaking to the other end. Speaking to the other end.
Nick, how involved were you with the casting and everything? I mean, this kid is amazing in the film. He's an incredible lead. I've never seen him.
People know Nick Robbins.
He was given good.
Yeah, he's a really good actor. I mean, he was in that Kings this summer, and he's in Jurassic World. He's a great actor, and Nick was there for all the casting. All of the auditions.
I was sitting there, but
yeah, but you always gave your opinion.
I was like, I saw that girl Morgan Saylor on Homeland, and I think during the season she went to rehab or something, and I was just like, oh, she's a perfect rehab girl.
Yeah,
that was the only.
He pushed for Morgan Saylor like crazy. Yeah.
You had a personal connection to her right away?
No, but
just felt like you knew her.
Felt like I knew her from some land.
Yeah. And this kid is, I mean, he carries the movie in many ways. He's in every scene of the film, and he's fantastic. How do you know when you're casting someone that they're going to be able to do that? After this long, you've worked with some of the biggest actors of all time, but you're casting a relatively unknown kid to carry the weight of a movie like this. How did you know that he was up to the task?
Well, you start with having an idea of who the character is. And in this case, even though it's not Nick, it's certainly an extension of him in certain ways. I have that in the back of my head. I'm looking at an actor and I want to see if he has the qualities, some of the qualities that I see in Nick in terms of his honesty and his depth and the way he plays things. And then to be honest with you, he auditions. And in the case of Nick Robinson, he auditioned with the guy that plays his friend in the movie, Devin Bostic, who plays Adam. And they clicked immediately. It was like as if they had known each other for forever. And I said, "Ooh, that's what it needs to be. It needs to feel like that."
Right.
And another thing, other than casting, we all stayed at a hotel, the Hyatt House, at this, and we all hung out after every day. And that kid, when he first showed up, he had a book about junkies. He had watched some YouTube, and he started asking me questions about it. And I would try to fill him in as best as possible. But since the writing was done by us and Matt, he kind of got our sensibilities. So did Devin, from just hanging out with us. Try to help him with that in that sense.
When 60 Minutes started in the late 60s, they started making money. CBS News were like, ooh, there's a profit center here. News can make money. There's profit to be made here. That started the very slippery slope of having this line blurred between show business and news. News is news. People's lives are at risk. When the main...
And again, what Nick is not doing is telling here too. If someone really respects and cares about their dad, maybe they look at them when they're speaking. Maybe they're tuned in to what they're saying. But look at what Nick was doing. Looking down, looking away, dissociating. Just overall shows a disconnection, a lack of care.
Mainstream media drinks the Kool-Aid on a rock and they just publish whatever is coming out of an administration and saying there's weapons of mass destruction, there's aluminum tubes, there's yellow cake and all this stuff.
So look at him, tuned out, looking up and away, looking into the clouds, not present, not present.
People wind up dead. People wind up dead. So we have to be very vigilant and hope that the press will maintain its independence, because that's the only way that we have a vital democracy and having an informed public. Otherwise, the people are just going to go, hey, it's a class, it's a class election.
Hey, let me jump in and say something before we start this one, because this is an important thing. If you haven't watched this entire video, go watch it. It's worthwhile. Rob Reiner has done a 7-minute political discussion. This is the last minute of 7 minutes of political discussion. And you can see the kid has dramatically changed body language by the time they get to it. I tried to leave it out because there's a lot of politics in there, and he's passionate about his politics, which he has a right to be. But I just did not want this to become a political show. I wanted to try to stay away from that. So I took this last part so you could see his behavior patterns, but that's it. So I'll caveat and let's start from there.
Well, to that point, Greg, it's now we've got a media professor.
And yeah, so when Rob's talking about politics like that, that is Rob being more selfish in that case. That's him on his soapbox. This is supposed to be about your son's movie. It's not really about politics. Like, you can talk about politics whenever you want. You don't need to do that when you're supposed to be talking about your son's movie
In front of us. And by the way, he has every right to be a media professor. I mean, it's like, who wouldn't like to be lectured by him? But he's definitely in lecture mode. He's out to the audience there. And as you say, now, this will be my mic. We've now got Nick, who's now messing around with the grill, which, anybody who understands a mic, and you might be right, Scott, he's never had a mic in front of him, but ultimately that's not an area you touch because it's going to get picked up by the mic. So he's totally disengaged, looks very disengaged from not only the talk going on, but also the equipment, the in the room as well.
Yeah, I think he loses it. I think his attention is lost once that starts, because he's used to, when his dad goes on a rant, I think he's used to just shutting up and listening to it, because he's looking up at the rafters or whatever, looking around the room, those kind of things, and has that blank look on his face. I think he's just ready for, ever how long this is going to go, that's how long it's going to go.
Well, if you didn't see the eye roll, when he says slippery slope, there's an eye roll, an outright eye roll in there. That's pretty powerful. So
He's probably heard that word slippery slope in reference to his addiction many times.
I'm sure.
But when Greg, you talked about roles last time, there's role conflict here. Like, is he this son with dad, or is he film guy? And I think role conflicts can make us shut down because we'll let someone else define our role for us. And that may be what's happening. But you could see Rob Reiner pivoting to a macro scale analysis, 60 Minutes, CBS, profit centers, democracy, Kool-Aid, people are dead.
That's when he checks out, I think.
Yeah. And this is very high altitude language. It's abstract. And I think it's functioning here with him to avoid emotional proximity to all the people in the room, especially Nick. And Nick doesn't interrupt, doesn't redirect. But I think his disengagement is a form of resistance. That's my opinion. But behaviorally, boredom is how emotionally muted people express a boundary when they can't fight against somebody's frame.
Well, and the other thing I would add here is every one of you watching, now we're back to the holidays, every one of you watching, this is exactly what I was talking about with trigger rituals, because now what he's done, and that's avoidance. Avoidance is extinction of behavior and that whole thing. Just, I agree with you that he's just saying, hey, I'm not touching that, because he knows where it will lead. Plus, he's in front of people. Now, people behave very differently when they're not in front of other people. So families will escalate because they're accustomed to it and there's no brakes on it. When other people are sitting around you, you have more of a tendency to look. Most, even really dysfunctional families often have a no public displays of stupidity. They don't get in front of other people and do it. So
what does that mean? Dysfunctional families have a no public displays of stupidity policy? Sounds a lot like what a narcissistic family's caring about image would be like, right? You care more about image appearing to be something rather than being that thing. Narcissistic parents want to appear like a great parent It's more important to them to appear like a great parent than to be a great parent. Could some of that be on display here with Rob, perhaps? I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
When you go in front of your family this week, and if there's something that triggers you, pay attention and curl your toes in your shoes and think about behavior panel telling you to calm down and not let your limbic brain take over and say something you really don't want to say.
You know, I think as well, Chase, for somebody who seems to me not self-assured, not really understanding maybe who he is, other than when he's talking about being an addict, and he's very self-assured about that. Just as you say, he's now in a lecture about big ideas and big issues. He's no longer in a talk about the film that he made with his dad. And even his relationship with his dad has got to be a tough reality to be with. And then there's the other reality of making films with his dad. And now there's the reality of, now you're talking about the bigger world of media and money and, as you say, everybody being dead. It's like, it's got to be hard for somebody who's not self-assured to locate themselves anywhere in that, to bang a pin into that and go, well, here's what I'm going to hang on to in that talk. So yeah.
Since you've been, go ahead, Greg.
And listen to the passion in Rob Reiner's voice versus what we've heard up to now. So, you know, if you have altercation with a parental figure, regardless whether it's your boss or it's a real parent, you're going to be less likely to step in when they're adamant and they're passionate and Marcus' hands are going and everything. So,
And it's a good point too. If Rob's getting that passionate about politics, but he's not speaking with the same passion about the film, what does that sub-communicate? Sub-communicates a little bit fake, maybe a little bit pandering, perhaps. But when he talks about politics, that's the thing that he talks about, and his eyes light up. That's what he'll talk about for free. So maybe there's a little bit of that shining through there, and maybe Nick knows that. Maybe
it's
makes me ecstatic for a second there.
Yeah,
makes me think of his role in All in the Family, almost. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think he's so used to those things, him popping off with these big long rants about politics or whatever it is, he just settles into oh, here we go, and it sort of checks out. I think that's what's happening. It looks to me like, anyway. Anybody else think that?
Yep.
Possible.
Yeah. And just to kind of catapult really quick, one more thing. If he had any underlying vulnerability, like a genetic risk for schizophrenia, any stimulants, especially marijuana, can trigger that for real, permanently. Flip this switch. It turns a temporary psychosis into something that's permanent. So,
and this is true. People don't know this, but people that are schizophrenic, stimulants such as crack, meth, coke, Adderall, Vyvanse, Ritalin, and then even marijuana, even though marijuana is not a stimulant, marijuana is more of a psychoactive, they can all have very bad effects on a schizophrenic brain. And as I said, it can make it worse. Those stimulants, I know people that have been schizophrenic, their drug of choice was stimulants, meth, and they would put them into psychosis. Not very good.
The drugs don't do it in everybody, but with just a little bit of a wrong wiring from DNA, they pull the trigger super fast, and they pull that trigger hard, which can really mute this affect. I'm not saying that's what's happening, but it's just good to know that might be what we're seeing, especially with childhood addiction.
Yeah, we're going to find out.
When 60 Minutes started in the late 60s, they started making money. CBS News realized, ooh, there's a profit center here. News can make money. There's profit to be made here. That started the very slippery slope of having this line blurred between show business and news. News is news. People's lives are at risk. When the mainstream media drinks the Kool-Aid on a rock, and they just publish whatever is coming out of an administration and saying there's weapons of mass destruction, there's aluminum tubes, there's yellow cake and all this stuff, people wind up dead. People wind up dead. So we have to be very vigilant and hope that the press will maintain its independence, because that's the only way that we have a vital democracy and having an informed.
So again, this wasn't in the other version, but this is him talking about the freedom of the press. This is not really about the movie, but you can tell how passionate he is about this. And also to note, though, we don't know what happened behind closed doors. When I say maybe Rob's doing this a little bit for image, I'm just speculating. I'm not saying for sure. Unless you live with them, you really don't know what it was like behind closed doors. So, in a way, we should all be cautious in what we speculate.
Public. Otherwise, the people are just going to go, hey, it's a class, it's a class election.
Who are some of your favorite comics in the game right now? And for Nick, only because you were talking about these WWE-styled microphones, who's your favorite wrestler? If you say Roddy Piper or Macho Man Randy Savage, we got to be friends, man.
Don't say those.
Who's your favorite? Who's your favorite?
I used to love Rey Mysterio as a kid.
Yeah, that
Rob Van Dam.
Rob Van Dam, the Frog Splash, and Rey Mysterio used to do that. What was it? The 609. You know, you go through
619.
Oh, 619. You go through the ropes and.
That's the happiest I've seen Nick in this entire thing.
Rob, how do you know that?
Because the boys, my two boys, Nick and his older brother Jake, they used to love wrestling, and they would wrestle with each other. We brought them a mat so that they could wrestle, and I took them to some of the WWE events. They got to get on, on the stage.
I didn't.
No, you didn't.
It was Jake.
No, but what wasn't that guy with the? No, the guy with the broke the.
It was Jake.
And what did you do?
Some of our favorite comics are.
Okay, comics. No, but you were there. You got to meet.
I wasn't there at that one.
Not that one, but.
Oh, this is awkward. So now he's disagreeing with him, making Rob look a little foolish here, like not remembering it correctly. Or there's an implication that maybe Rob's not as an attentive of parent as he's trying to portray here by this disagreement. And maybe Nick likes the fact that he's making him a little bit uncomfortable here too.
Who did we meet?
I was the
Trish
one.
Stratus?
Yeah.
You met Trish Stratus, didn't you? And the Big Show? Did you meet the Big Show?
Met the Big Show.
All right, so you were there. Or just that one time he wasn't. Okay.
That was a great scene, guys.
That made Rob uncomfortable, not knowing the answers to that. Look at us dancing with his legs there.
And what about your favorite comic?
Louis C.K. Hands down.
Yeah, I'd say hands down. Probably right now he's the.
Did you guys see Horace and Pete?
Yeah.
His show, amazing, right?
Yeah.
Really incredible.
Yeah,
Chris Rock or something.
Chris Rock, yeah, Chris Rock's great too. Yeah, I mean some of my favorites, go back from a long time ago, but those guys work.
You said in the game today.
In the game today, okay, yeah. So Richie Pryor wouldn't be one of those.
Richard Pryor.
I think in this one, Rob sounds like Albert Brooks. I know they're like best friends, but man, he sounds like, dude, who'd you see? Didn't you see the something? That whole thing sounds like the Jewish father or grandfather more than father at that point. Didn't you see the so-and-so?
Tell the people.
All the time.
Yeah. Well, it is
exactly.
infantilization. There's a lot of, turning him into a very childish figure. Go on.
Like he translated the question.
Tell the people what you saw. Tell them.
Well, see, I don't think he can help that though. I think that's part of his being a father, that nature of wanting to, especially but I can say it, being a Jewish father. That's where they are. They're so proud. And they want you to talk about what you've done, and so I think that's his way of doing it. I think he's had that done to him by his father, and then
you can perceive that as a little bit controlling too, in a way. Oh, tell them this, tell them that, and like you got to jump through their hoops a little bit. But again, it's tough when Nick isn't really asserting himself in the thing. He's not stepping up. So it just makes everything more difficult. If someone is fully self-actualized, those kinds of situations don't happen as much. Like the father's not going to feel the need to say, oh, come on, Nick, say this. Or what about this, Nick? So it just makes it difficult.
That's why he's doing his son. I think that's just normal for that. So that's why I saw that.
I've got a 17-year-old son. If I was on stage with him, I would feel supremely comfortable. And I think that I would have an instinct to kind of help him along and like nod him in the right direction a little bit.
Yeah.
But really, I think it's a rare and direct invitation for Nick to be the subject of the question. And Rob kind of hijacks it. And this whole thing is him inserting himself into Nick's childhood memories. This is behaviorally significant. Rob doesn't ask Nick to elaborate. Tell him some more. What was your favorite thing about it? Tell him a little bit more about it. And he shifts from Nick's memory to his version of Nick's childhood. super weird because his legs start swinging under the chair. What did y'all think about his leg swinging? Well,
So I noticed the lead swinging too. It looked uncomfortable to me. But also note this. A father that's attuned, I think you would know to not do some of those things. Like you'll know what it takes to get your son to open up a little bit and to like not have to poke and prod. Like you'll just know. You'll know a little bit of what makes him tick. But the fact that he doesn't can be a little bit telling too. Could be telling he doesn't really get it. He doesn't really understand his son. And that's one of the things that makes these interviews so awkward.
The other interesting piece, the leg swing aside, yeah, because he's stressed when he's talking about the brother. The brother is now an issue again. We see the brother come up, and you see emotional eye accessing, and then he even edits his son's remembrance. He's saying, "No, you were there. No, I wasn't." There's a little bit of back and forth. There's no anger yet. They're still pretty good natured. But I think the kid is embarrassed. Actually, if you look, he breaks eye contact, looks away, and then kind of sneakily pulls his eyes back around to look and see how the other guy is responding. I think he embarrassed him. I think that editing that his son's and look, father-son dynamics are strange. And you know, if you've got a teenage kid, much less this, I think this kid's in his 20s here, 23, something like that. If you got a teenage kid, the dynamic is all kinds of all over the board because they're trying to establish what it is to be a man. And meanwhile, he's gone through all this, and now he's trying to establish what it means to be a man and work with his father. So the dynamic is really weird. And I think both, you're right. You'd try to guide him along, you'd poke him. But I think when your personality is really big, and Rob's is, it's tough sometimes not to overstep and say, wait, that's not right. This is right.
Yeah, I mean, look, you've got part of your job, my view would be, is to help your child become an adult. And that doesn't mean infantilizing them as much as you might.
Word of the day, infantilizing. Kat was saying that.
They might be in a situation where you feel like they need help. You got to help them be an adult, not help them be more of a child in that situation. There's a lot of ideas around addiction that suggest that for some addicts, they're stuck in development and they haven't transitioned to that adult. Jung would have said you have to give the child the opportunity to kill the father. Well, this is ironic, isn't it? Because the idea is you give them an opportunity to kill the father without actually killing the father, without that act actually happening. And here, it's obviously the father is dead, and it may well be that the son is responsible for that.
Well, the most emphatic thing we've seen from this kid yet is in the game today. Most emphatic thing we've seen. So he's redirecting. But he did try to get him off topic when he was saying, "No, you were there." He said, "Let's talk about your favorite comedian." Boom, didn't do it. Just kept going.
Interested in the wrestling though, which again is again for me is interesting because it's one of those entertainments that really fuzzes the boundaries of what's real and isn't real. You know, what's true, what the true violence.
And one of the things that can happen to rich kids in particular is I consider it hollow because they haven't had to deal with a lot of adversity. A lot of times, a lot of things have been handed to them. Now, of course, even rich kids can be abused too, of course. Rich kids can experience SA. But sometimes it's just like they don't have to fully develop. They have this like stunted development, it seems sometimes. And some of this kind of applies to Nick in a way, I would say. It seems like it at least.
Is and what the made-up violence is and what the true character is. And it's difficult for somebody who might not be so self-assured.
Are you trying to tell me it's not real?
Yeah, no. It's whatever Greg, it's whatever you want it to be. Whatever you want it to be. It's like Father Christmas. If you want him to be real, he's real.
Santa Claus off the top rope.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the first fist fight I ever got into.
With Santa Claus?
Telling somebody wrestling was fake.
Okay. Never puncture that bubble.
Yeah. It was 3 months ago.
Did she win or you?
Good one.
When you found out it was fake, you started telling everybody?
Who are some of your favorite comics in the game right now? And for Nick, only because you were talking about these WWE-styled microphones, who's your favorite wrestler? If you say Roddy Piper or Macho Man Randy Savage, we got to be friends, man.
Don't say those.
Who's your
two.
favorite? Who's your favorite?
I used to love Rey Mysterio as a kid.
Yeah, that
Rob Van Dam.
Rob Van Dam, the Frog Splash, and Rey Mysterio used to do that. What was it? The 609. You know, you go
619.
Oh, 619. You go through the ropes and.
And all this is eerie. Just think about this. 10 years after this interview, he allegedly kills him. Doesn't it put this whole thing in a different light? It's surreal, really.
Hey, Rob, how do you know that?
Because the boys, my two boys, Nick and his older brother Jake, they used to love wrestling, and they would wrestle with each other. We brought them a mat so that they could wrestle, and I took them to some of the WWE events. They got to get on, on the stage.
I didn't.
No, you didn't.
It was Jake.
No, but what wasn't that guy with the? No, the guy with the broke the.
So Jake's his brother, I think, and he's like, "No, my brother got there, not me."
It was Jake.
And what did you do?
Some of our favorite comics are.
Okay, comics. No, but you were there. You got to meet.
I wasn't there at that one.
Not that one, but who did we meet?
I was the
Trish
one.
Stratus.
Yeah.
You met Trish Stratus, didn't you? And the Big Show. Did you meet the Big Show?
Met the Big Show.
All right, so you were there, or just that one time he wasn't. Okay.
That was a great scene, guys. That was
Yeah. And what about your favorite comic?
Louis C.K. Hands down.
Yeah, I'd say hands down, probably right now. He's the.
Did you guys see Horace and Pete?
Yeah.
His show? Amazing, right?
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
incredible.
Or
Yeah,
Chris Rock or something.
Chris Rock, yeah, Chris Rock's great too. Yeah, I mean, some of my favorites, go back from a long time ago, but those guys work.
You said in the game today.
In a game today. Okay. Yeah. So Richie Pryor wouldn't be one of those.
Richard Pryor.
I come from an Irish background. We have a lot of alcoholics. And
Huh.
so I've always talked to my daughters about our history and worried about them, becoming alcoholics. And I wonder, did you have a conversation with your son or any of your children about your family history, the genetics, addiction, and all of that? Or did you
Oh.
just kind of brush over that?
Very good question here, especially considering what we talk about on the channel.
And then I'm also curious what birth order Nick is in.
I'm a middle child.
Yeah, he's a middle child. We have three. Yeah, he has an older brother and a younger sister. Well, my feeling has always been that whether it's alcohol or drugs or gambling or sex, whatever the thing it is that you are doing to excess is usually based on self-medication, because there's some issues that you have that you're trying to ease the pain of. And so we certainly talk about it in those terms, and trying to understand why somebody is.
Now let's put our theoretical hat on here too. So let's say, for sake of argument, I'm not saying this is true, but say Rob is a narcissistic father, and maybe this could be an element of him not recognizing how he contributes to the family dynamic. That's a possibility. But again, ultimately, either way, the responsibility is on Nick to do something about his problem. Once you're an adult, it becomes your responsibility. Is there an element of maybe Rob shifting it a little bit to make it just that? That's possible. I think Rob's trying to understand it, but clearly his efforts were not good enough to understand it. Or at least it just didn't end favorably, right? If you don't understand it, you got to do the next right things.
The way he is, and why that person feels the need to make yourself feel better at some point or other. We do talk about it that way. I don't have any history in terms of, there's a string of alcoholics or a string of, drug abusers or anything like that.
String of problems, though.
No, definitely a string of problems. That's for sure. We definitely have our neuroses that gets passed from generation to generation, and we do talk about that stuff.
So Nick answers the easy part here. He goes, I'm a middle child, and then just vanishes. He's out of frame. Rob step up and he starts performing. He doesn't answer the question really hardly at all. She wants something emotional to come out, and he's essentially just reading her a Wikipedia page about drugs and alcohol. Like, do you talk to your son about addiction? She's trying to get some emotion there. That should be an emotional response. But he gives this little TED talk, and they're sitting there promoting a movie that's about the drug. It's the emotional thing about the drugs. It's just unbelievable.
And honestly, that's the question for Nick to be answering, right? He's the one with the addiction. Why shouldn't he answer the question? Now, is it possible he just doesn't have the self-awareness to answer the question? That's true too. But I get what they're saying. Rob's given this sort of shallow response, right? Where's the depth? Where's the depth in this response? Where's the self-reflection in Rob's response either, for that matter? Maybe you could say, you know what? Maybe I could have been a better father in this way. You don't hear much of that either.
I think he's given permission to pontificate, and he's asking he turns it into an opinion question. Chase, he said, "What's your opinion of why this happens?" Is all he does. He doesn't answer the question. He actually runs down there. But I thought this was defiance by the kid to actually be able to say, "Plenty of problems." That's a big deal for him. Raise his head and go, "There are plenty of problems." I think it's because he's agitated from something that's happened in this interview. If you go watch the whole thing, because if you watch him,
I think it's the only truthful thing in this exchange right here is him saying that string of problems thing.
and he starts to chew the inside of his mouth a little bit. I think that must be an adapter from swallowing whatever he really wants to say. But this is about as good as he musters, it appears to me. Just my thought.
Yeah, and Reiner doesn't go into anything about this, what he calls the neurosis. And that would be interesting. Like, tell us about that family history of neuroses, and he's saying, it somehow is being passed from family member to family member. There's some kind of pattern that he's suggesting happens. But
an addiction runs in families, right? Some people will say, is it really addiction that runs in families? Or is it the trauma that runs in families, right? That's what they would used to say. But considering the genetic component of so many things, it makes you think, well, maybe it's just the genes. The genes are being passed down. Same genes, same likelihood to have mood disorders, same likelihood to have mental health stuff that would be then self-medicated by drugs, right? And then, of course, the environment plays a part too. No one says it doesn't. So any trauma, CPTSD, abuse just adds fuel to the fire, in my opinion.
Neurosis there instead of psychosis, which, if the
I'll pause this.
It makes me wonder,
Thank you, To Thrive. Narcs conceal in public, the Max slips in private. Indeed, it does. That's why they're a completely different person behind closed doors than they are in public. And again, with anyone in Hollywood, there can be an element of that going on. Public persona, different behind closed doors. Sure, definitely a thing.
Because for a son to kill their father, that's not particularly neurotic. That could be, at some point, psychotic.
I don't think he's talking about truly a neuroses or a neurosis. I think he's just saying, yeah, we fuss a lot. And I think he's addressing his own thing, because I'm sure he goes off the rails sometimes at the house when nobody's around. And it's just the family there. You know how it is at the table where somebody will start talking, they'll just go off and everybody say, all right, good, let's hear it. I think that's what it is. And they're fussing back and forth as they have, because they've talked about it in different places as well because of his drug problem, Nick's drug problems. I think that's what he's trying to sort of tamp down the how big it got by calling it a neurosis, or we all have this, we all have that, because I think they argue a lot. I think there's a lot of argumentative situations in their home.
Well, this is what I'll come to, is neither of them have any decent words for any of this stuff. I mean, maybe they've got a film about it. Chase, you're saying, look, kind of it's in the film. So maybe both of them are great filmmakers around this. But as being able to sit there and say, here's what happens in our family, okay? It's using the word neurosis, which isn't in the DSM-5 anymore. It used to be, but certainly has medical, clinical connotations to it. And as you say, Scott, maybe he's talking about just having an argument. Okay, so don't use neurosis then. If you sit down and you have discussions about it, use words that you use in the discussions about it. Tell us what actually happens.
I think people are.
So he's basically asking for more depth. Like, go deeper. You made a movie about this. Like, let's really hear it. Now, a charitable interpretation would be, well, they made it in the movie. They want you to watch the movie. Charitable. But this is an opportunity for Nick to shine here, perhaps, and talk about the real struggle, if he's comfortable to do so. But clearly he wasn't comfortable to do so. Maybe it's because his father is there. And granted, I don't think I would like talking about that kind of thing in front of my dad either, for that matter. It can be an awkward thing.
Placing the word idiosyncrasies with neuroses now.
Right, okay.
Oddity. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think you're right. And look, whatever people use in their daily life, they're going to use sitting in front of this camera. He's got his own person. He's got the right to be the 800-pound gorilla in the room, so he can say whatever the hell he wants, and he's gotten away with it.
So, Chase, you saw the movie?
I watched a 12-minute spoiler recap.
Oh,
I bet
okay.
a lot of people are watching this movie. I bet a lot of people are
I
watching
wonder
it.
if it's any good.
Well, it's Reiner.
Yeah, it's Reiner. I bet it's good.
Okay. Anybody see Spinal Tap, the new one?
Yeah, of course.
I haven't seen a new one.
Don't
Oh,
bother.
the new one. No, I've not seen the new one.
Yeah, don't.
No? Okay.
It's bad. Well, it's 65, 70-year-old guys playing the role that it's hard to have that kind of energy for.
Just doesn't work. Just doesn't for me.
I come from an Irish background. We have a lot of alcoholics. And so I've always talked to my daughters about our history and worried about them, becoming alcoholics. And I wonder, did you have a conversation with your son or any of your children about your family history, the genetics, addiction, and all of that? Or did you just kind of brush it?
And my parents did with me. They said alcoholism runs in the family and just don't. That's really all it was. They didn't really have any understanding of anything deeper than that. Why? Especially because pre-internet, people just didn't know about this stuff. It really wasn't, unless you went to school for it or went out of your way to read books about it. It just wasn't common knowledge. But now on social media, you can learn about all of this stuff because of creators like me and others, all of the licensed professionals on here. The information is at people's fingertips now. So now ignorance is no longer an excuse. It's okay. It's here. If you want it, you may as well go try to learn it now.
Over that. And then I'm also curious what birth order Nick is in.
I'm a middle child.
Yeah, he's a middle child. We have three. Yeah, he has an older brother and a younger sister. Well, my feeling has always been that whether it's alcohol or drugs or gambling or sex, whatever the thing it is that you are doing to excess is usually based on.
And as I'm thinking here too, what Rob could do when Nick gives one of those short answers, he could find a way to get him to amplify more. Like, oh, tell us more about that, Nick. Just something to help him to open up and to feel more comfortable. There are some people that are really good at that. You call them naturals in a way. I have an uncle who was like that, and he's just great at getting people to be the best version of themselves. And one of the ways to do that is you're fairly non-judgmental and you're playful, and it's a very fun, lighthearted energy, which makes people feel comfortable being themselves or helps them to be more comfortable to be themselves. But it doesn't seem like Rob is doing that here. He couldn't get him to say, all right, how about this? Oh, tell us some more about that. Oh, could you expand on that? You don't hear that. And maybe Rob is uncomfortable with the silences. I don't know. Or maybe he just wants to talk himself. I don't know.
Self-medication, because there's some issues that you have that you're trying to ease the pain of. And so we certainly talk about it in those terms, and trying to understand why somebody is the way he is and why that person feels the need to make yourself feel better at some point or other. We do talk about it that way. I don't have any history in terms of, there's a string of alcoholics or a string of drug abusers or anything like that.
String of problems, though.
No, definitely a string of problems. That's for sure. We definitely have our neuroses that gets passed from generation to generation, and we do talk about that stuff.
I want to end on just a very funny story that I heard you tell, if you don't mind telling it, and it's the Mary Tyler Moore story with where you touched.
I talked about on Colbert.
Yeah, and
Oh, thank you, Danielle. I appreciate you in the chat and all the insightful things you've had to share.
That's a true story.
It's a really. Do you mind telling it real quick?
I don't mind. I mean, it happened.
Hilarious.
I mean, it's not. I'm not telling tales out of school because Mary talks about it in her book.
Yeah.
And she's actually told the story on the Letterman show. I was 14 and I was like, my hormones were raging. And Mary Tyler Moore was like this really sexy. She was 24, 25, you know. She had those hot capri pants and very skin tight.
Yeah.
I don't know what possessed me, but I just went and grabbed her tush. Just gave her a grab, and I was like the devil was making me do it. And my father called me into the office and says to me, did you grab Mary Tyler Moore by the tush? And I went, yeah. And he had a big smile on his face. He said, don't ever do that again.
That's my boy. Well, it's really.
Look at that. Look at the Nick's face here. He's like, oh my God, he's creeped out by his dad here. Embarrassed by him, creeped out. It's a look of disgust.
Well, that's fairly interesting, I thought.
So all of this is odd. All of that. Where do we start with how odd this is? Let me begin with a 14-year-old unable to moderate their behavior with an adult female. That's interesting. And then the devil made me do it. That's an interesting.
What a deflection. A way to avoid accountability, right? The devil made me do it.
Idea as well.
And don't we inherit many of those? We unconsciously inherit a lot of that stuff from mom and dad. And you can see it on Nick's face. There's concealed anger.
Yeah.
He's fully detached. He's forcing laughter here at a few points. He thinks he needs to perform for maybe during these points. And there's something going on with his psychology here, and I'm not sure what it is. I'm open to theories. Do y'all have any theories?
I can see a lot of signs, but I had the same thing. I said, I don't know what's going on in his head because he's got a lot of rolling around in there. We see what looks for the world to be contempt. We see disgust at the end. It's like, hey, my dad just farted in church. One of those kind of things. It was that because it's a different world than his dad grew up in. But I see his eyes rolling around in there looking for things, a whole lot of different, but we don't know what is generating those kinds of facial expressions because you see him looking around and trying to figure something out.
I will say what happened was he knows what he's talking about is almost taboo now. You can't do anything like that, or much less say anything like that. We've seen no expressions in this other interview up to this point. I don't know if he's shown any in this interview or where this came from, but I think it might be performative so he can show everybody, I'm not like that. I don't think that way. That's the feeling I got from it because it was so over the top.
Let me get this right. At what period in history, and let's just talk about America here, was it okay for a 14-year-old to grab Mary Tyler Moore's backside? At what point was that? If I was a 14, would people have gone, oh yeah, no, of course you can. Yeah, no, of course you can.
Yeah.
So what's being set up here is somebody goes, hey, tell that story. And he kind of goes, well, I can tell that story because Mary Tyler Moore told that story. Well, why did she tell that story? Is she telling that story because she's going, okay, like this is okay, it was good fun, 14-year-old, in some way, not knowing that was probably not, I'm not sure that's ever been like, yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, and it's like he's kind of insinuating, back in the old days, you could just grab an ass.
Yeah, it's 14-year-old, you just grabbed somebody's ass. Yeah, of course you did.
So I think
never did that.
If I was there listening to my dad talk about being a horny teenager and grabbing somebody's butt cheek, I would probably show contempt. Greg, you just did it on your face. Like, I think I would have the same, maybe I would be uncomfortable at least.
Oh yeah, he's doing something against your mom.
Well, it was just your mom.
And Maurice, this is a good point here. It's not mutually exclusive that if a child has committed a crime, the parents have contributed some way to it. Yeah, and that's not always true, right? Sometimes kids can act out. Other times, the parents can contribute. But it's not a sure thing, like some people want to say. Oh, it must have been the parents. No, not always. Definitely not always.
I mean, it's just like I said, it's a fart in church. This is loud. This is not like a, you let that kind of stuff go to sleep, even if it was normal in 1948. Mark, you probably don't.
But it wasn't. I mean, unless it was, you tell me. I mean, was that?
I don't know of a time it's been okay.
Did everybody go, hey, listen, you're a 14-year-old now.
Mary
Go and find a star and go and grab there. Here's the thing. Look, drama and comedy both are made up of antisocial behavior. If you haven't got a lot of antisocial behavior in your drama and comedy, you're dead. You're dead in the water. It's all about people doing the wrong thing and the wrong thing in front of other people.
Interesting. That's an interesting way to frame it. Comedy and drama is all about antisocial behavior. What do you think about that, Chad? Do you agree? I guess it depends on your definition of antisocial, but I agree. I think especially with comedians, it's all about people messing up and doing stupid things. So I think there is an element of that there. And the same with drama, right? Who's going to watch a drama if there's no antisocial or toxic behaviors in there? They're not going to. It's boring. There has to be some protagonists.
And so it can become hard to mediate. Like, am I in a comedy right now? Am I in a drama? Like, even Rob Reiner has no idea, clearly.
Scott, I think you might be right about the wife piece too, however, because as he's described, before he says he does it, and I don't know that he knows this story, before he says he does it, he's describing how hot Mary Tyler Moore was. And back to all of us are saying, his dad's sitting there. I think it might be related to his mom too. Who knows? But of course, his mom is long out of the picture by that point. But
yeah. Wait, isn't his mom, is he from the first marriage then?
No. Penny Marshall's the first marriage.
Wait a minute. He married Penny Marshall?
Yeah, he was married to Penny Marshall for a while.
Are you sure? I didn't know this.
Yeah.
Throw that in the Goog and see what it says.
The Goog.
I swear I didn't know this. He was married.
Now I'm suddenly realizing we're talking about aristocracy here. So not only.
Of course you are.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. I'm embarrassed that I don't know who Penny Marshall is.
Yeah,
Laverne and Shirley.
Okay.
His father is absolute royalty.
Oh yeah,
so
Carl
this is about what you can do in the palace, and you can do anything you like. And the king will go, oh yeah, of course you can grab her. Yeah, of course you can.
You're right. It's Penny Marshall.
Just aristocratic Hollywood. Wow. You're allowed to do anything you like because you're Hollywood aristocrats.
You don't get any more aristocracy than Carl Reiner. I mean,
dang. Penny Marshall, I had no earthly idea.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Didn't know it. Yeah. Oh well, no big deal.
I want to end on just a very funny story that I heard you tell, if you don't mind telling it, and it's the Mary Tyler Moore story where you touched.
I did. I talked about on that on Colbert.
Yeah,
that's a true story.
It's a real. Do you mind telling it real quick?
I don't mind. I mean, it happened.
Hilarious.
I mean, it's not. I'm not telling tales out of school because Mary talks about it in her book.
Yeah.
And she's actually told the story on the Letterman show. I was 14 and I was like, my hormones were raging. And Mary Tyler Moore was like this really sexy. She was 24, 25, you know. She had those hot capri pants and very skin tight.
Yeah.
I don't know what possessed me, but I just went and grabbed her tush. Just gave her a grab, and I was like the devil was making me do it. And my father called me into the office and says to me, Did you grab Mary Tyler Moore by the tush? And I went, yeah. And he had a big smile on his face. He said, don't ever do that again.
That's my boy. Well, it's really good.
All right. That's fairly interesting. Mark, how did everything look to you?
Oh, yeah, fairly interesting. Look, complete tragedy, obviously, what's happened here and shouldn't happen to anybody. But as we're looking through this, I think we're seeing some not indicators that anybody would commit a murder, obviously, especially, killing their mother and father. I mean, obviously. I mean, anybody who goes, oh, yeah, you can see it there.
Right.
That is somebody instantly talking nonsense. but are we seeing some small threads that might make some, horrible sense out of it? Well, probably not total sense, but I think we're getting some threads that we could maybe pull on, and they might start unraveling the pullover slightly of what's going on here. I mean, I'm learning as I go along exactly who these people are and what they mean. Chase, what do you think? What do you see?
Yeah, I'm with you. And like what you said, there's no like early murder detection checklist. I looked.
You'd have
I'm
written
sure
it if
somebody
there
has
was.
written that book.
They're on TikTok.
You'd be going, here's my checklist.
Yeah. I wish I had one.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is such a tragedy. And I think it shows how powerfully patterns can run our entire life. Just little tiny behavioral patterns run the show. And we do know that he started young with marijuana, so I'm adding this in. Marijuana is a neurotoxin. It is neurotoxic. You use it early in life a lot, and this is proven. You're looking at a drop in IQ that will never go back and permanent brain damage, full stop. It can trigger psychosis, flip the switch on schizophrenia. And I do acknowledge some people with legit problems actually use this, but even with that, it's the same cost and the same risk, especially if it's used by younger people. And I added a deep dive behavior profile into the notes, and you can download all of our notes in the description of the video right down below us.
So that's something to take into consideration, especially with weed and kids. It's become so much more socially acceptable now. But regardless of how socially acceptable it is, it can still have those consequences on the developmental brain. And maybe even the adult brain too, for that matter.
Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because just like you said, there is no indicator someone is going to kill someone. There is, however, a complex problem that we do see. We see contempt more than one time. And we know that the number one indicator of divorce in therapy is contempt between partners. Well, when you're in a situation where you can't escape, that contempt can get really, really rough. I mean,
these are good points here by Greg. Contempt is the number one indicator of divorce. And when you're stuck in a situation, like when you're financially dependent on someone, contempt can really run rampant. That makes sense.
every day, people at work who can't quit their job show contempt for their boss, and their boss misses it because of the power differential and they don't notice it. If your father is a person you have contempt for and you perceive it as no way out, it might make you do something different than you would do otherwise, especially if your brain is not functioning normally because of some chemical you've dumped in on top of it and your brain is swimming in that chemical. So not saying we can see anything. What we can see is a pattern of obscurity by the son who tries to avoid the conflict with the father in public. But we also see that his personality or his demeanor changed dramatically from the time it was regular conversation to the political rant. So we can't tell you that we could have stopped this. No one could. And what a shame and a tragedy. Scott, what do you see?
Yeah, I agree with that. And to add to that, I think for me, it looks like that this might have been one of those situations that as this kid grew up, his dad was gone a lot. He didn't they talked about it. He didn't get to connect a lot when he was a child. And he even mistook a situation and made a big deal about it where he was connecting with his other son. I think is it the older son?
Yeah.
And just thought he was there and was like, yeah, you did. And that's where he says, let's talk about comedians again or whatever that situation was. I think it's a lot of that built up, not hatred, but that aggravation and that frustration you get from all those things that make you feel that contempt for a parent.
You think it's resentment?
Yeah. Like huge, big time from all that, and having somebody who's that famous and then coming from a father who's that famous, then he's that, and then Nick isn't famous at all, not even a little bit. He tries to give him a little bit of something, tries to shoot him a little, a little heat there, and it doesn't work as well. He doesn't do anything with it. I don't think he's capable of doing anything with it. From watching him talk to people and seeing that disconnection from any kind of social situation, from how they talk about him. So I think this is I think it's years of built up resentment and contempt for a father. I think it's that dangerous thing you always hear about. And then he just flipped out one night after that argument. Apparently they had this argument at Conan O'Brien's party and he was talking to Bill Hader. That's what I heard. And then after that is when he ended up leaving. after the parents had fussed with him. Has anybody else heard anything about that part of
No,
it?
it's just the story. Once you add in other celebrities, it's just like, it's all Bill Hader's fault. It's like, what did Bill Hader say to him? Like,
Of course, nobody knows. And I just saw this as I was flipping through things, trying to find any other interviews with him. I
Yeah.
saw those things popping up, and I was like, oh, Bill Hader.
Well, most of the interviews are older. You're not finding many.
Let's see. Thank you, To Thrive. Many of us got abused and didn't kill someone. Correct. Abuse and trauma is not an excuse for poor behavior. Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct, To Thrive.
More recent interviews. So
Yeah, but the news pops, those little shorts are in there.
Yeah.
And everybody's, they're saying all kinds of stuff in there now, isn't true.
Yeah.
So Bill Hader may not have even been at the party for all I know.
probably Gwen Stefani was responsible for it all.
That's what I've been saying.
Bound to be.
What I told everybody.
Bound to be.
Oh, well. All right, fellas. Things another good one, and we'll see you next time.
Don't forget to subscribe.
Too late. You're already out.
Yes. Subscribe to my channel while you're here too. So Num, tell us before I close this down here, tell us a little bit about Nick and Little League and what that experience was like. He also went to a school called Wildwood. I always knew it as the druggy school. Interesting. Why? Because it's the rich kid school? Because where was Rob Reiner's family? Is it Malibu? Was it like he was a shy kid? Yeah, that makes sense. And that's also congruent with the maybe autistic piece too. Yeah, Brentwood. Okay, that makes sense. Next to the Palisades, the same Palisades that had the fires. Yeah, I mean, definitely introverted also, but to me, it's a little different than just introversion. Like as someone that has like some spectrum myself, I can sense that part in him. But then also because he has that, he's uncomfortable in his own skin, uses drugs, drinks. All of a sudden now he's comfortable in his own skin. He's proud owner of many psychology disabilities. It was never good for me to do any amphetamines. That makes sense. Amphetamines are rough. Amphetamines are rough on the brain. That's for sure. Welcome, Pussycat. Yeah, he does have some of that Eeyore routine going on, it looks like. And that's like vulnerable narcissistic people have that. It's like the covert envy, some grandiosity in there too. He wants to shine like his dad, but he just hasn't been able to meet it. I don't see that many of the vulnerable narc types, but that does kind of fit that description, I would say. Especially considering everything we know about him now. It's like, yeah, that meets it. That meets the criteria. And when they're talking about neuroticism, that reminded me of Dr. George Simon. Dr. George Simon talks about character and neurotic. So there's the character disordered people and then the neurotic people. Character disordered people can really be anyone, but often narcissistic people, abusers, antisocial personality disorder, the Machiavellians. So it's not only the fact that they have those issues, they also have a lack of character to go with it. So you add those two things, boom, you're in a bad place. Or, Maui just could also be that his awkwardness makes him seem less intelligent. That's also could be a thing. Rob was a funny guy. He would sit next to someone when he was eating something for the shock value from the shack. So if his wife came by and asked what food is that, he would say it was the person next to him. Ha! Got some old man humor. Got some dad jokes by Rob Reiner. Yeah, that makes sense. I could see him. Like, again, if you want to see the real Nick, just watch him after he snorts a little H or drinks some booze. Then you'll see the real him. and then Mask Off. Then you'll see the Mask Off version of him, right? That's the thing to pay attention to. But now it's all too late because life's over for him. Life's absolutely over for his parents, without a doubt. So all we can do now is try to learn from the situation. So if your parents out there and you have a kid struggling with addiction, what do you do? I think it's just essential to get to that emotional safety place first. Make sure that they feel comfortable being honest with you for real. But it has to be for real. If they're not comfortable being honest with you, nothing's going to work. But again, mental health contributes to the people not feeling comfortable being honest. There's so many factors. So you have to isolate the variables and try to get one thing at a time. That's what I would say. This was probably right as he got into drugs. Yeah, probably the last of his true self, I would say. I'm not sure if he has. Did they drug test him? They probably did, right? I don't know if he's been to rehab either in the last 10 years either. I bet you Rob probably dabbled in some drugs, probably drank a little bit if I had to guess. I think he was clean, but I'm not sure. We can see. No one knows. I haven't heard anyone talk about this part yet. No, I haven't heard anyone talk about it. But anyway, it's about time to wrap this up here in a minute. We're going over for 3.5 hours now almost. But Dr. Salerno and Christian John and I will be speaking tomorrow. I'll be uploading that probably the next day. If you have any topics in particular you would like to see me address with Dr. Salerno and Christian John, let me know. I have a good idea of what we're going to talk about, but he was also the worst player on the team, like he didn't care. Yeah, I could see that. It's a shame. I get it. Like, I can get Nick's issues. It's just so hard. It's so hard when there's so many mental health things going on. I got lucky myself. I don't deny there was an element of luck in my story. Now, I'm glad you shared it, Dom. I'm glad we're getting these insights about what he was like as a kid. HG Tudor, when he does his breakdowns, he says, yeah, it's important to dig into the past. You get some clues. Thank you, Thrive. To Thrive, being homeless while your parents are worth 50 million. Yeah, I mean, but also he did it to himself. Like, I imagine they were probably pretty lenient, his parents, but they must have pushed him too far. And then after that, maybe he was able to manipulate them to say, yeah, I should never be homeless again. I should never be this again. So you better not have boundaries with me. But maybe he was just being manipulative. Maybe he was being deceitful and lying. I mean, that's always a possibility too. So no mental illness runs in the Reiner family? I'm not sure, actually. And that question in the interview, that was their opportunity to ask it, but they didn't. Or that was their opportunity to answer it, I should say. Rob Reiner didn't answer it. He gave that Wikipedia answer, as they said, and he didn't dive in. But that was the opportunity to address it, and he didn't. Even the DuPonts gave them money to stay away when they were awful people. The DuPont tragedy. There was a DuPont murder. People can choose to better their lives. Macaulay Culkin turned his life around. Absolutely, Kat, he did. He made a good turnaround. I would like to think yours truly has made a good turnaround too. But all right, guys. I'm getting tired. It's 1:34 a.m. where I am. Wonder about Rob's wife or family history. Yeah, we don't hear much about her in this, right? It's just Rob Reiner and Nick. They take the story. They take the What is it? They steal the spotlight. That's the word. Thank you for everything to Thrive and Danielle and everyone else who was supporting. It's awesome to have you here. We got a great flock of black sheep here. Good night, Pussycat. And Cat, the sun's up where you are again. But get some rest over there. Huh? Good night, good fight, everybody. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.